For 60 years, we have been here, the voice of the environment. Here, speaking up and for your national parks, all across the islands of this nation. The places God visits for vacation, spanning over 2.5 million acres of land and sea. How delighted then he must be to see a sea of pink, as flamingos mingle and haven like jingles play where queen counts still sleep. And if you listen, you can hear it. The words of gossiping parrots awaiting the diction of the day. All 365 of them, that's every day and every year, 15,000 children share in the beauty of this playground. Our name is yours. And we have been yours for years unnoticed. Don't forget us. Support us. Your national parks. The defenders of your environment. Join us. Remember, our cause is yours. The first land and sea park in the world is yours. Heritage. Here it is. When was the last time you gasped at our scenery, gotten lost in the depth of our reefs, or even awed at the green of the leaves of our trees? Don't hesitate to donate and volunteer. Don't hesitate to care. We are here for you. The Bahamas National Trust, BNT. 3 letters that spell out simply, perfectly, and undoubtedly that we are yours.
At Fort Montague, I'm Opal Roach. This is ZNS.
It's a beautiful, breezy day in the capital, Nassau, and today is a very important day, the most significant day for the judiciary as we mark the opening of the legal year. It is the second Wednesday of January, and that is prescribed by law under the Supreme Court Act as meaning the start of the sittings of the courts. My special co-host today is renowned attorney Ramona Farquharson, who is also the host of the ZNS TV show, The Legal Brief. Good to have you with me, Ramona.
It's a pleasure being with you, Julian.
And first, I must congratulate you on the success of your show. I'm hearing many Bahamians saying how beneficial it is to them.
Yes, it gets stopped often.
Asking for free legal advice.
Yes, follow-ups and also suggestions, but I think it's wonderful. I'm happy that we are able at this time to provide that service to people. Certainly lifting, I think, the shroud from the legal profession, allowing persons to know exactly what their rights are, what remedies they have.
Now, today is an exceptionally important day for the judiciary. Do lawyers get excited about this day?
Yes, I believe they do, particularly those who've just been called. It's almost, apart from their being called, this is like the first official ceremony that they will be a part of. And so you will see a lot of them being or playing a part in these proceedings.
Now, the mandate for the year to come is given today. What all do we expect to happen today? Now, we know that we're going to actually give coverage of the procession.
Yes.
Right, from downtown, from the heart of downtown, and the church service at Christchurch Cathedral. And, of course, when the first sitting occurs here in the ballroom of Margaritaville.
Yes.
But what else do we really expect, and what is truly significant about this day?
truly significant would be that our Chief Justice, Sir Ian Winder, will give the charge. He will give the speech from the bench outlining what will be what ought to be accomplished this year by the judiciary. A lot of things or new initiatives have already started to come on board, such as the new family complex, the new family court. He's also going to speak about the council bill or act, whereby now you have the judiciary, they've moved from being governmental to now being quasi-governmental. That's quite significant. He'll be talking about the new filing system, the civil procedure rules, the changes that have taken place, all in an effort to help make justice more accessible. The backlog committee. I know many people be screaming and saying hallelujah, because the person's, there's an adage, justice delayed is justice denied. And so often persons, they have matters in the court and they get so very frustrated because it's there. However, we always have to keep saying to them, we're waiting on a date, we're waiting on a date. And that has to do a lot with administration, which they're trying, this committee is going to address, as well as he will speak to the new complements of justices that have been brought on, again, to assist with dispensing justice in a timely manner. And so all of that will be laid out by him, which is really important.
Well, let's hear directly from Chief Justice Sir Ian Winder in this clip that we recorded earlier.
There have been significant changes over the last year. The Court Services Act came into effect, which has impacted the way we do business. There have been changes in terms of processes, reform in terms of criminal procedure and electronic case management. So there have been changes that have impacted the way the judiciary operates. We've added new courts, so we've had a full year, and tomorrow we hope to report as to what has transpired over the year and give the people indication of what we hope to foreshadow for the coming year. Just to see some of the reforms that have taken place take root, and to see if we can, if the plans that we've put in place can actually develop, specifically the criminal case management rules, and to see how if that will accelerate the impact and the pace at which criminal trials take place.
That was Chief Justice Sir Ian Winder, and he spoke, of course, which you also mentioned,
Yes.
too, the new family court, right? And how important is that? Because we're finding a lot of, if you listen to what's going on in the news, there are a lot of family issues. Well, of course, there's a sexual offenses court, too. But things like domestic violence, so they come under the family court, or?
Domestic violence will certainly come under perhaps more so the criminal courts. However, when we're speaking about family courts, we're talking about divorce matters, maintenance, bound overs. Even I'm understanding as well that juvenile court will certainly be coming under that head.
Right.
And at that complex on Bernard Road, there was an opening a few months ago. And so that's where now family matters, such as what I just outlined.
So things like child abuse, etc., or do they straddle the juvenile court and the family court?
Usually the perpetrators of those offenses tend to be adults, and so no, they would not. They would be charged before, they would be arraigned before the magistrate's court, and then their cases, depending on the charge itself, will be still heard at Nassau Street or at Supreme Court. But again, when we're talking about divorces, I think the thought is that you now want to have a specialized court where it is not so very adversarial. Family matters, at the end of the day, although parties are separating, many times you have children involved. And so it is thought that we need to have a different approach, perhaps more softer approach, rather than the very, the law. When you talk about going to court, you're talking about a very robust and sometimes adversarial and aggressive proceedings. But the family court, I'm understanding, it ought to help take a different tone, a different shape. Now, bearing in mind as well, Julian, this is all very new, very new to us. And so certainly in the next year or two, we would see, I guess, the kinks will be ironed out, and we'll find out, I guess, whether or not it was in fact necessary. But a lot of other neighboring jurisdictions have decided and taken this step.
But as a practicing attorney, one who goes to court, have you seen an improvement improvement in the system over the past year, let's say?
So far, I would say the family court has not. They just opened.
No. But I mean in general.
In general,
what are your colleagues saying?
We have the new civil procedure rules. A lot of us, again, are getting climatized to that. And so there are pros and cons with it. For instance, filing is now something that you can do within the comfort of your office. However, it is still, you still have to go and use the traditional form in terms of payment. I think it was thought that in the beginning, once we file, we would be able to pay over the system in the comfort of our offices as well, or wherever we are set up. But unfortunately, that did not pan out, and hopefully they will get that working. But, like I say, pros and cons, but it's change. Change is needed, and it's a step in the right direction. You
can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
The Sentencing Guidelines Commission, which was mandated to have the guidelines returned by the end of the year, has that happened?
As far as I'm aware, not as yet. And I take it that His Lordship will speak. If I'm speaking out of turn, he will certainly indicate that later on in his speech. But as far as I know, not as yet.
Now, we know that downtown now they're getting ready for the actual procession. You can see them beginning to line up.
Yes.
I'm sure you've participated in this procession many times.
Yes, sir, many times over the course of, 23 years now. So, yes.
What is that like?
Usually the mood is you're excited because, again, ultimately we're a family, Judiciary, and there you're able to see colleagues perhaps you've not seen for the year, or even longer if they didn't show up the year before, because again you tend to be so very busy. So it's wonderful to see everyone in their regalia. You're meeting, you're discussing matters, and it's a new year as well, so you're giving that greeting, and also too you get to see the judges and all together, and so there's always a sense of comfort as well, that whatever there may be or turbulence, but here it is, we're unified, we're together, we're beginning the year with positivity, in prayer as well, and so it's exciting, but as well it's quite solemn as well, and you can see as they're heading out.
Now, the Red Mass was held on Sunday at St. Francis Xavier Cathedral, the Catholic Church.
Yes.
You care to explain to our viewers and listeners, because we are actually on radio as well, what the differences between these two events are? Well,
the Red Mass is traditionally a service where you begin the year, they've already started then the legal year, in prayer. And prayer over the these proceedings, and also for the year to come. When we now go to Christ Church Cathedral, it's slightly different, because in there you're getting a charge, so to speak, from the head of that church, which is obviously the Church of England, and they're therefore giving us a charge as to what I take it the church would expect, speaking as to what may be happening in society, what may be of concern, and a charge as to how we ought to conduct ourselves, how we ought to address matters.
Now, these events are full of pomp and pageantry,
yes,
and it's wonderful. I think it's great to show our history and tradition. But on a practical level, going to court on a daily basis, some people say, we need to not wear these wigs, we need to not wear these robes. What is your position on that?
Well, as for the wigs, we do not wear the wigs anymore. Under Sir Michael Barnett, when he was Chief Justice, the wigs were mandated only then for ceremonial special ceremonies, and obviously whenever we lay someone to rest, one of our colleagues were able to wear it. But apart from that, we do still wear the robes and the collar. And I think it's important for people to understand not only the history, but really the practical reason behind it. We ought to be uniformed. You ought not to be able to, when we appear in the court, to be able to say, well, this attorney, I think, has money. This one doesn't. This one is so shabbily dressed. This one isn't. And getting into perhaps individual characteristics. This is a uniform.
And that's a very important factor that
Yes.
I didn't even think about, actually.
Yes.
But, yes.
Yeah, so we ought to be uniformed, and that way as well, it assists the court with their oath that they took to dispense justice without fear or favor and without ill will, to be neutral. Yes.
Let's talk about the sexual offenses court. Sadly, we've been hearing a lot of sexually oriented crimes going on in the country,
Yes.
Particularly against women, sadly. Obviously, this court is a very important court. Now, does your practice involve much of that? You're a criminal defense attorney, aren't you?
I'm a general practitioner, but I do practice on the criminal side. And there's a thinking and a thought that it is necessary, particularly when children are involved, that because they are vulnerable, there's a thought that we ought now to move away from having them to have to appear in court, stand in the dock, and testify. Now, persons may have a certain feeling about that. My being a defense attorney, I tend to more subscribe to the thinking that you ought to be able to face your accuser. If you're saying that someone did this to you, this heinous crime, I have very much a traditional view that therefore you ought to stand on your feet, you face the person, and you say it. And then you're able to be questioned and cross-examined, and the jury would then have, as they do now, have a very full view of you, of your entire demeanor. They can sense. And from that, they are the triers as to the fact, and they can make a determination. However, again, many jurisdictions, particularly I believe it is in England and the United Kingdom, they have already moved away from that. There's preferred that children ought to be in a secured environment, feeling more comfortable on a camera, and so we would just see them projected on a television screen, and then you can question them from there. But again, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Now, of course, reform is always necessary, and one of the big issues, of course, is the backlog of cases. We have, 23 Supreme Court judges, 8 Supreme Court registrars, 22 magistrates and acting magistrates. That sounds like a lot to me, but nowhere near enough for what our demands are?
When you look at things, let's look at this. And every year, unfortunately, the murder, just the rate of murder has moved from when I got called. It used to be around 40. We're now to over 100 a year.
Right.
So imagine that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just murder.
And
that's not armed
consistently
robbery.
over 100.
And that's just one aspect of crime. Not armed robberies, stealing, rapes, a plethora of other offenses. And so hopefully that puts it in for persons to quite understand the magnitude. So yes, we may have that many judges, but how many practice on the criminal side?
Now we take a look at some of the justices on the screen, and some I know personally. I remember when they were actually beginning to think about studying law.
Yes.
And it's good to know that they're able to do the work that they're doing. But with regard to backlogs, again, the Chief Justice said that the idea is to take a focused and integrated approach to reform with backlogs and to speed up trials without affecting fairness. And that's really crucial, isn't it?
Yes,
because
it is.
Because just because you're brought before the courts doesn't mean that you're necessarily guilty.
Right.
Right? So there has to be fairness in the whole process.
And many times persons are working for the state and they are interdicted. So they're placed on half pay. And that's affecting their livelihoods. They have mortgages, children, their families. And so if you're accused of a crime, and here it is, you have to remain on half pay for 4 or 5 years. I mean, think about that. If you are in the armed forces, there are times when there's a desire for you not to work. There are certain rules that say that you ought not to have additional employment. Then how do you provide for your families? And so certainly there is a need for us to address this pressing issue, and so that, again, justice can be not delayed so much.
Let's bring up another hot topic for the public,
Yes.
the issue of bail.
Oh,
Now, a lot of people believe that, people who are accused of murder should not have bail, but that is unconstitutional, isn't it?
it is. Because, again, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. And so someone can say that you've done something. You certainly may not have done so. And so how is it that you ought to be unduly punished or incarcerated until your trial comes up? And so the court has a balancing act. They have to look at, obviously, the defendant as well as society. And that's why, as well, you have certain parameters or checklists that the courts consider. One of the things would be, as well, of if you are on bail, and let's say that you're then charged again, the court then really begins to consider whether or not I ought to allow you to be on bail, or again, should I implement an ankle monitor or curfew? Or have you confined to a certain area? Again, still permitting you to have a certain level of freedom, but it perhaps being more monitored and curtailed.
Now, when we have situations where some people say, oh, this person got bail for a murder charge but went straight to prison for some, or didn't get bail for what would seem to be a lesser charge, can you explain the mechanisms about that or around that? Mechanics around that?
Well, it all depends on what they're charged with. If you're charged with, let's say, armed robbery, but then you may be charged with housebreaking, you may get bail for the armed robbery, or let's say more likely you got bail for the housebreaking, but you didn't get bail for the armed robbery, which is a matter before the Supreme Court, because at each time your suretors, if you are granted bail, they have to sign. So it may not be a case that you did not get bail. You may have gotten bail.
But you didn't.
However, do you have persons that meet the requirement? Do they have sufficient earning capacity to be able to sign your bail? Because again, the courts want to ensure that you show up. Not only that, but that you abide by their conditions. One of the conditions being not to reoffend, perhaps stay within a certain area or curfew. So they want someone who can have control over that person. So gone are the days when mommy can call up a co-worker, and because that person has a free property or something without a lien, they can come forth and just sign. No, they certainly want to ensure that there's some level of control and relationship in order for you to sign.
Now we can see the procession.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is actually. On George Street and heading towards Christchurch Cathedral, and that Mass will begin at 10 a.m., which is less than 10 minutes from now. Let me, because just still on bail actually, sometimes, and I got to be careful how I say this, but sometimes law enforcement has said, oh, it's the courts, it's the courts why all these things are happening. But the Chief Justice pointed out, he says, we do not make the laws. We merely interpret them.
Yes.
And that's really just a fact of life, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's incumbent upon the police. And of course, much has been said about the lack of confidence that the general public appears to have in the police. We now have a new commissioner. I think it was on the 3rd of January,
Right.
the handover, the first female commissioner
Absolutely.
of the Bahamas. And so there's a lot of hope and high expectations that certain things will be tightened up and put in place, and so that take it that our law enforcement officers will be walking a straight line.
So, and if you can correct me if I'm wrong, we've not had a female Chief Justice yet, have we?
Yes, we had.
We have?
Justice Joan Sawyer.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes.
How could I forget that?
Dame Joan Sawyer.
That?
And yes, she is an eminent jurist.
Yes, no, she is.
Yes, certainly. And she was
And
also president of the Court of Appeal.
Remarkable career, yes.
Yes, certainly.
Now they're entering in, and the
You will
ones
see the
in
justice.
Explain the colors, and we've seen these in the red and black robes. There's some significance to that, isn't
There
there?
certainly is, because the red robes would be the Supreme Court justices. They are making their way in, and it is symbolic. It dates back to the 16th century as well, that the red symbolized very much the passion, the blood. It was about holiness. And when they would go, and that's where the red mass, that name came about as well. It's about the symbolism of the Holy Spirit. And I guess whatever color was prominent at the time. And so you see that you have that shroud on the robes of the justices, and you may have a strip on the registrars that depicts that. However, those of us who are in the outer and inner bar, you would not see that red. So the black you see there would be those of us who are just, I would say, regular counsels. And then, of course, there are some king's counsels as well amongst us where, again, you can say, I think Mr. Khalil Parker is King's Counsel, president of the Bar Association. They are also in the procession as well.
We also saw some green coats.
Yes, those would be persons from the Industrial Tribunal. Yes, and that would be that distinction there. Yes, another arm, which is quite important when dealing with labor workers and dispensing justice amongst employees and employers. So very, very important arm as well.
Great. And, of course, as they enter Christ Church Cathedral, they are all being greeted by the Dean of the Cathedral, the Right Reverend Harry Bain.
Yes.
Good. Let's talk about you personally, if you don't mind, and your experiences as an attorney over the years. What are some of the most fascinating cases you've actually had to deal with?
Quite a few, I guess, as time goes on. I represented Cordell Farrington, and that was quite interesting and at the time very involved, and he would have been charged, of course, with the 5 murders of young boys in Freeport. And that was quite interesting because at first that matter was set in Freeport, and I remember arriving on the plane and then driving and having persons shout insults and try to get to my vehicle even after court, following me to the hotel.
Some people believe he didn't deserve to have a fair trial.
Well, they didn't believe that he ought to have a trial at all.
Period.
They wanted to deal with that street justice. They wanted street justice, so a person would say become vigilantes. But of course, we have a very strong history, not just of our parliament, but also our judiciary as well. And we were able to make an application for change of venue, and that was acceded to, and that was done by the late former Chief Justice who would have passed, Stephen Isaacs.
Yes,
the late Stephen Isaacs. But he, of course, he was just an ordinary justice at the time, sitting in the northern region in Freeport.
You mentioned Cordell Farrington. Now, we may have a similar situation with Chris Ferguson depending on what happens with that. We know he was just arraigned in connection with 12-year-old Adriel Moxie's death, and according to reports, he is confessed to some other murders.
Well, I guess once those are substantiated, the police will do their investigations. And then, obviously, which is quite sad, if it is borne out to be true. And in fact, if he's convicted, because again, he's still innocent until proven. I believe someone else was held first.
Right.
And people thought it was that person, and so now is someone else come forward.
Which shows the real importance of having fairness in the system, isn't it?
Yes, and the process. And two, one of the things I'm hoping for with under this new commissioner is also the implementation, if we can, of our own forensic laboratory, and not meaning we have a lab now, but primarily they just do preemptive tests.
Right, we have to send
off to the United States and elsewhere, but to have DNA testing in the Bahamas, I think that would really assist the police as well as the backlog. Because many times, let's say sexual offenses, the prosecutor is handicapped. They're not able to proceed because they're told, okay, it's there's a financial burden. Samples have to be sent off in batches. And so you may have, let's say, the case of the young girl, Miss Moxie, a prosecutor may wish to deal with that this year. However, depending on certain administrative issues, they may be told, well, listen, we have other things in the queue, and that perhaps we won't be able to send off those DNA samples for another 2-3 years.
Wow.
But because it's budgeted, I'm understanding, there has to be a budget, and then they're sent off, and then when the results come in.
Oh.
Because you have to disclose if samples are taken. Because think about it, if samples are taken, and we know that based on what would be in our voluntary bill of indictment, however, the results are not there, any good defense counsel can certainly make a lot of momentum with that. Why have you not brought the results? If you have DNA, you bring the results because it's. And so in many instances, the prosecution, they would wish to wait for that to come in before they proceed with a trial. And again, they're handicapped. So it's just, it's really a plethora of issues because yes, you have the judges, but in many instances, I've been appeared in court along with my husband, and matters can't proceed. They can't proceed because, again, sometimes witnesses don't appear, but then we have certain Section 66 amendments to the Evidence Act where statements can be read in under certain conditions, or, like we say, evidence just isn't ready.
Wow. Tell me if you can. When it comes to assigning cases, now this is an internal administrative matter, I presume. How do they assign cases to which judge? How is the order brought up? If you're able to explain that.
My understanding is presently the senior justice that used to be Justice Bernard Turner. However, he's been elevated to the Court of Appeal.
Right.
Presently now, that is Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson. Excuse me. But she now, upon arraignment, most arraignments are done by her. And at that point, she will then indicate, once you've been arraigned before the Supreme Court, because if it's a capital offense, not just capital, but if it's a Part C matter, such as murder, rape, armed robbery, very serious offenses. Once you come before the Supreme Court with your voluntary bill of indictment, would tell you the date and time, you appear before the Supreme Court. You are then rearraigned, because many times you're arraigned in the magistrate's court, but you're unable to plea because that's not the proper place. You're just before the courts. You're then given your voluntary bill of indictment. It tells you when to appear before the Supreme Court. Once you appear before the Supreme Court, you're then rearranged. You're then able to answer the charges, and it is at that point that then that senior justice will say either she will keep the matter or you are to then appear before whichever justice for case management for it to begin. And so I believe that it's pretty much very much a queue process. I don't believe that there's any cherry picking at all.
No, I didn't. I didn't mean to suggest that.
I know,
Yeah.
but persons just to waylay any myths that she has the names there. Okay, this judge is next in line. I'll send these 2 to this judge. I'll send these 3 like that.
Yeah, that's great. So the whole criminal case management, I really wanted to get to, because of course, and people have to remember, there are 3 branches of government.
Yes.
And we should have said that at the beginning. The legislative, the executive,
and the
legislative, which is parliament, the executive, which is cabinet, and the judiciary.
Yes.
Right? And there's a move to have even more independence of the judiciary. And you see that happening?
Yes. Already we have the Council Act.
Right.
And so that means ultimately that the judiciary now, they have their own purse. And so that speaks a lot, right?
I've heard a lot of people actually complaining about that and advocating for that.
Yes. And so now I'm understanding they now control their purse, how they're spending, and so they're no longer cap in hand to the Attorney General and the executive seeking funds. And so that really is a very bold move and a step in the right direction for being autonomous.
That's great. And now we're just a few minutes away, actually.
You see the last of councils,
actually, yes,
filing into the church.
And any moment now they will begin the service,
Yes.
which should continue until 11 o'clock, should be just about 1 hour.
Yes, sir.
And then they will be making their way here to Margaritaville to this ballroom.
Well, you certainly, but just before that, you will have an inspection of the guard by the Chief Justice, which is important because, again, it's arm in arm. The police force, or Bahamas police force, as well as the judiciary. Because bear in mind now, that's why, too, we have the provost marshal. The provost marshal is, in fact, the commissioner of police.
Right.
There they are then the court marshal, the supreme marshal, the provost marshal. And their job is to carry out the judgments of the court, serving summonses, carrying out those judgments. And so it's very, very important, and it's symbolic. And I'm certain, I didn't quite see her, but I'm sure she's perhaps present, the commissioner. And that symbol is there to say, I am present, I'm the provost marshal, I'm chief. And so me and my officers, we're ready to serve. Yes.
That's a wonderful feeling to have, actually,
Yes, it
right?
is.
And, you know, a lot of people who may have doubts about our system should really understand that this is really a very solid system.
It is. It has our forefathers and have thought of quite a bit. And also, too, this system has been tried and tested. You're talking about a red mass that would have come into play from 1685, when you would have had King Charles II die. And so under the Westminster system, we've adopted a very rich judicial system, and not very much is left up to chance. However, I find that sometimes we fail, the participants perhaps not carrying out what is already before them, not following the guidelines, not following the plan. And then when that happens, or things are left to chance, or just left there and not picked up readily and dealt with, then we begin to see cracks in the system.
And I think you may have touched on it a little bit, but technology in the court system and in the judicial system now, is that advancing?
It certainly is. As I stated before, they now have a cure system where we don't file like we used to. We used to make the copies, walk over to the cashier's cage, to the Supreme Court, and then they stamp, we pay, put in our check, and they stamp and pay. Now they have a system whereby you have to load, you get your username. Most firms, law firms, you have your username, and you're able then to file. And the thinking is you can file at any time. Now, however, it will be processed perhaps if you're after the 5 o'clock hour or so the next day. But so it's moving in the right direction.
That's
digitally.
Great. So all they have to do now is get that payment issue sorted out.
Yes, and then too, it's useful because usually, or in the past, when you would go to court, sometimes the judge would say, well, what documents should be before me? And then counsels would have to stand and say, well, you should have this affidavit or this summons. And the other side will say this. And then the judge would say, well, no, actually, it hasn't made it to my file as yet. Now, the judge ought to be able to just by a stroke of keys, click and put in the name of that matter, and everything ought to just be on their screen, and so they're able to view it. Yes.
Let's speak to some of the other issues that might be highlighted during today's events. Outstanding judgments, the commercial courts, the firearm courts.
Yes.
I'll start off with those three for you, if you can give your input, because you have such an extensive knowledge.
Yes, certainly. Thank you so much.
We appreciate greatly here.
Yes. Unfortunately, judges have, I don't know if I can say a habit, but it seems to be, unfortunately, a common practice of taking inordinate delay or time in giving rulings and judgments, and I think every firm can speak to that. I've had to wait in some instances 4 to 5 years for a decision. Yes.
Wow.
And time is still ticking in other matters, and of course the clients become frustrated because, again, how much nudging can you do as counsel? The matter's before the judge. You ought not to be seen to be pressuring anyone. But every now and again, I take it every 3 months or 6 months, you send an email to say, just a gentle reminder to the clerk, can you please ask my lady or my lord to give us a decision? In some instances, I've had a decision that's still outstanding, and the judge has been elevated, else moved from that division and now elevated into the Court of Appeal, and decisions are still outstanding. And so it's very unfortunate, because these things affect, it may not necessarily be criminal, but it may be a civil matter. May have a matter outstanding where someone owes you, or where you have an issue with the bank, and where they may be holding your deed. So it could be a plethora of things that really have practical impacts on people and their lives.
People understand that there are these delays in the court system, use them to their advantage, don't they?
Well,
if they're the ones who are, may
Julian,
have to pay.
you want me to get into trouble now?
No, I
Please
don't want
stop.
that.
Please stop. I certainly will not go or follow down that line. But wherever, unfortunately, wherever there are vulnerabilities and weaknesses, there are persons that may choose to take advantage. But again, hopefully with this new system, the digitizing of filing documents, of putting in applications, we have as well a new listing officer, is Rhonda Bodie. She's also counsel, and that's very different. Usually our listing officers were just laypersons, or persons who've worked in administration and judiciary for a while. But here it is, I believe it's for the first time, we now have counsel who is she's a listing officer. And so certainly that ought to bring a certain level of understanding and empathy and a sense of urgency, because she would know that when a counsel files a matter, would be aware of how clients press. They wish their divorce matters to be heard, civil matters, etc. So it should be excellent.
Let's talk a little bit about the firearms court, which is obviously, sadly, needed these days.
Yes.
Particularly with all of the number of guns that we know that are coming in, and the numbers that the police are taking off the streets, but still.
Yes. That would be Court 15 at Nassau Street, and presently Acting Magistrate Lennox Colby, he sits in that court. He presides, the magistrate in that court. They tend to begin at 2 p.m. And that's another thing. Now that we now have the family complex, there ought to be some shifting and movement. And so hopefully he will now have his own court, because unfortunately he didn't. He was sharing court with Magistrate Wims. Okay. And that's why court was beginning at 2 p.m. But with the shifting and movement, hopefully his court can now begin the regular time, which would be at 10 a.m. Yes.
Now, the goal, if I remember correctly, is to actually have an entirely new court complex that I think will stretch from, is it Charlotte Street to the Rodney Bain building event? I mean, obviously that's going to take some time to happen.
Let me say this. From the time I got called, 2020, from 2001, I remember my first year and going into the Ansbacher building, and there was a beautiful rendering, drawing at that time. I believe Sir Burton Hall was the Chief Justice at that time, and that was supposed to be the new court complex from 2001. And so hopefully it will happen. I believe that they have taken positive steps. I believe there's been some acquisitions of land, clearing so far. And so hopefully in the within 5-10 years, we should see it.
Great. How important is it for practicing attorneys like yourself, though, to encourage that to happen? I mean, it must be a lot more convenient to have, if you're dealing with multiple cases, to have them all in one complex.
It certainly would be, and I hope that once it does come on stream, that everything will be will be in one building, because again, I believe a lot of people, whereas persons are open to the family complex, there's a con as well, because a lot of people are concerned about that commute, because there are a number of schools in that area. You have Kingsway, I think St. Augustine's College, a number of schools. And so can you imagine in the mornings, if you have court for 10 and it's Bernard Road, you have to set out, I would think, by about 9 a.m. or even before. And then, of course, depending on your route, if you're coming Shirley Street, you may encounter Queens College. And so that can be an adjustment.
Actually, I've heard some public commentary about that, it's wonderful, but why there?
The location. So we wait to see, and then, too, it's going to combine Supreme Court as well as magistrates. So all family courts are going to be in that one area. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how that's going to work. I understand they have ample parking. I wait to see it. However, I'm just concerned about the commute and traffic in that area.
Now, we should be starting fairly soon at Christchurch Cathedral. The Mass should be underway soon, and we will be bringing that to you live. And as we said, it should take only about an hour, the service. And we expect to hear from Harry Bain, who will say some interesting things, but also from the Chief Justice as well. And
thereafter, certainly he will give his charge. And just of particular note, I'm quite familiar with the Right Reverend Father Harry Bain. We're from Little Pharmacy Exuma. I got to put that plug in. I got to put that plug in. That's
Didn't
my
realize
home.
he was an Exuma woman.
My grandmother was the late Eula Nixon. And so, yes, there you go. So I'm very close. In fact, Father Harry Bain's father is my mother's godfather, was my mother's godfather, so very close.
The wonderful thing about the Bahamas, we're all interconnected.
Yes, we are.
Good. Any other comments you want to make generally about today and the masses that we've had so far, and things that you'd like to see going forward that we may not have covered yet before this mass actually gets underway?
Well, certainly, I'm happy to see. It seems as if good numbers came out. Because we have, 1,500 or more councils on the record, on the roll, that is. And so it's good to see. It seems to have been a good representation that has come out. I believe I want to see more positive change, not just change for change's sake, but positive change. I believe as well, I would like to see not so much political interference in the processes of the judiciary. That has really been a discussion amongst councils as to appointments. Unfortunately, it's so sad. It tends to be so very marginalized. And so I'd like to see perhaps a change in that, who becomes a judge, and perhaps more interactive, where it's not so much shrouded in secrecy. We tend to find out only at the very end when these persons are about to be appointed, and not knowing, let's say, if they're up beforehand. Because when you become or you apply to become an attorney, that is circulated. The bar, so you put in your application, the Bar Association will send out a circular and say these are the persons that have made an indication that they wish to be called. And so you have a time period when you can comment, you can object. And I would like to perhaps see that same practice when we're talking about appointing our justices as well.
I think that would be a very good move and a very fair one.
Yes, certainly.
Well.
Because obviously our neighbors to the north, they tend to vote. I mean, they're more robust. But even if we don't take it that far, certainly to have some input. Because if, 20 years you've been at the bar, or some even longer than that, you've had certain experiences with different councils. You may have a viewpoint, and it ought to be heard for there to be transparency, because ultimately the persons who are appointed to the Supreme Court, they have security of tenure. You just can't move them in that way, and their decisions can certainly affect, or does affect, lives, and in many instances permanently.
Oh, well, yes. I'm sorry to keep making things personal, but I want to hear some of your highlights again of your collegial career. 20 years at least now?
Yes, 2001. So it's now 24 years, heading on 24 years. And I spoke about the Cordell Farnan case. I also, my first murder trial would have been with respect to Akeem Roll, the young boy that had passed away. I think it was Independence. Garth Roll was the defendant. His father where he would have succumbed in the tub, and I believe there was a bit of a ruse that he was missing and persons were looking for him, and then ultimately he was found not too far from the Ministry of Works where the father worked. And so that was my first murder trial that I did, and Sandra D. Gardner was the prosecutor, who's now a magistrate, and we appeared before he's now deceased, the late Justice Marks. And so that was quite interesting. One of my pupil masters, Mr. Wayne Monroe, he came in to assist me with the forensic aspect of the questioning. But other than that, that was my first trial.
Quite a career. You're a TV host now. Perhaps you need to be an author of your first 20 years or so in practice. Let us go now to Christ Church Cathedral, where the Mass is beginning.
A reading from the letter of James. Listen, my beloved brothers and sisters. Has not God chosen the poor in the world to be rich in faith and to be heirs of the kingdom that he has promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor. Is it not the rich who oppress you? Is it not they who drag you into court? Is it not they who blaspheme the excellent name that was invoked over you? You do well if you really fulfill the royal law according to the scripture. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you show partiality, you commit sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. So speak and act as those who are to be judged by the law of liberty. For judgment will be without mercy to anyone who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but do not have works? Can faith save you? If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and eat your fill, and yet you do not supply their bodily needs, what is the good of that? So by faith itself, if it has no works, is dead. This is the word of the Lord.
Dr. Spatman, hold it, Dr. Spatman. Thank you. You may be seated, please. My brothers and sisters, good morning. I want to recognize today the presence of our Bishop, the Right Reverend Leish Boyd, Bishop of the Anglican Diocese of the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands, and Archdeacon Hugh Bartlett and Fathers Eric Miller and John Pinder. I also wish, on behalf of the wardens and members of Christ Church Cathedral, to welcome all of you here this morning, extend warm greetings and good wishes to all of you for a safe and healthy, productive and meaningful new year. To the Honorable Sir Ian R. Winder, Chief Justice, and his dear wife, Justices of the Supreme Court, Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder, KC, Attorney General, Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honorable Wayne Munro, KC, Minister of National Security, Mr. Justice John Isaacs, President of the Court of Appeal, and Justices of the Court of Appeal, President of the Senate, Honorable J. Michelle Arley, former Chief Justices, members of the Senate, members of the House of Assembly present, United States Head of Missions, Charge d'Affaires, Ms. Kimberly Furnish, and members of the U.S. Diplomatic Corps, and most especially, and I wish to offer my congratulations to her, Ms. Shanta Knowles, the Commissioner of Police, the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Deputy Commodore of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, members of the Judicial and Legal Service Commission and Court Council, retired justices, permanent secretaries, acting Director of Legal Affairs, Director of Public Prosecution, President and Vice President of the Industrial Tribunal, registrars of both the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal, Chief Magistrate and Magistrates, Mr. Khalil Parker, KC, President of the Bar Association, and executive members of the Bar Association, government officials, members of the Inner and Outer Bar, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to you all. Today I'm not the preacher, so I have a few short ones for you. A few short ones, and I will not try to take away too much time from the bishop. So, light moments for the opening of the legal year. And the first one is, why don't lawyers enjoy fishing? Because the fish don't fall for their lines. And what do you call a smiling, courteous person at a Bar Association convention? The caterer. How does an attorney sleep? How does an attorney sleep? First he lies on one side, then he lies on the other. What is the difference between a good lawyer and a bad lawyer? A bad lawyer can let a case drag on for several years. A good lawyer can make it last even longer. Why are estate attorneys the most determined. Because where there's a will, there's a way. What is the difference between a lawyer and a herd of buffalo? The lawyer charges more. Finally, a lawyer's dog dies, and he wants to honor it with a grand funeral. He asks the priest, but the priest refuses, saying it's inappropriate. The lawyer asks, do you think 50,000 would convince you? The priest quickly responds, why didn't you tell me the dog was a Catholic? My lord,
in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Some words taken, please be seated, some words taken from Paul's letter to the Philippians. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Mr. Chief Justice, sir, members of the judicial services in our land, and members of the legal profession, I greet you all and wish you a happy new year. We have made it to 2025, and we ought to be grateful and use this opportunity to do good things. It is an honor and a privilege to address you on this, the opening of the legal year. And I've chosen for my reflection words from our brother Paul to the Philippians. Whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, pleasing, and commendable, think about these things. Paul's letter to the Philippians was written when he was in prison. He wrote to thank them for their ongoing love and support, and to thank them for the gifts which they had sent to him by way of Epaphroditus. He also wrote to encourage them in their faith. His message was, the joy doesn't come from possessions and relationships entirely, because possessions and relationships can be taken away. True joy comes from Jesus Christ alone, and not from circumstances. It is from this platform that Paul wrote some other powerful words in this same epistle, that we find joy, that the Philippians find joy in suffering, in serving, in believing, and in giving. And that is why I chose the text which I did, from which to address you today, members of the Judicial and legal professions in our land, I want you to find joy in what you do, in serving and in giving of yourselves. You may ask, how so? And I'll ask you to follow me closely for a moment as I tell you. These ceremonies surrounding the opening of the legal year represent a fine tradition. And I am one of those who believe that we need to maintain this tradition. As I have often said to some of you, I'm a wig and gown kind of guy. Just look at what I do for a living and how I dress. And so you won't get much revisionist sympathy from me. What is tradition? Tradition is the transmission of customs, benefits, practices from one generation to another to provide grounding, identity, and meaning. But tradition also gives us the impetus for life in the present. Tradition is a part of every person, society, and culture. Every single one. We gather as families for Christmas. We do something else for New Year's. We open up gifts at a certain time. We gather for birthdays. All of these are traditions, to name a few. Traditions define us in a deep and fundamental way. They give us identity. They define us over and against others. They give limits to our world and shape our consciousness. They add character and life to our landscape. I would be quick to add that it is healthy to review and to modify traditions. In every age, groupings will keep some features of tradition and discard others, and over time, develop new norms. This is how tradition evolves. Some of us find these ceremonies today, for example, a bother. We suck our teeth, we grunt, but we turn up anyhow, again. Some of us enjoy and revel in these ceremonies, which I think we should. But any tradition or symbol or ceremony is superficial and meaningless unless the deeper meaning and purpose are known, appreciated, and proclaimed. That deeper meaning must govern our philosophy and our behavior if we're going to be more than a puppy show and a carnival. And I know that your distinguished selves would not want to be a puppy show or a carnival. Today, then, is not just about carrying on a custom, but today we gather according to custom to celebrate a system that brings justice and wholeness and resolution to those who are in need. The poor, the middle class, the rich, people of every race and creed. That is what this is all about. And we mustn't miss that in all of the fanfare. If this system of providing justice fails, then shame on all of us. How then, do you ask, do we live the real meaning of these ceremonies? And I just have 3 suggestions. 1, you are called to administer justice, to manage and to operate our legal system. It is not a perfect system, but we must be quick to note that it has many good qualities. It also has room for growth. It is easy to be negative, to be overly critical, and even to be cynical. But don't do that. Each of you must do what is in your power to make the system the best that it can be. That's sensibly and practically how it has to work. Each must do what is in his or her power, in his or her corner or realm, to make this system the best that it can be. And that exercise starts with you yourself as an individual. The system is as sour and as bad as your negativity, your cynicism, your failure to perform, your lack of accountability, and your lousiness. Plain and simple. Conversely, the system is as good, positive, and efficient as your best attitude, your accountability, your self-application, your integrity, effort, and hard work. In short, all of you make up the system. So do your best. Be your best. Give the system your best and make it the best that it can be. I have already tried to change the whole world, and I know it can't be done. So I'm not expecting any one of you to change the whole system. But I simply say, be your best. Do your best. Give it your best. And make it the best system that it can be. Point number 2. Remember that you're human. Do not let God, processes, procedures, and pressures diminish your humanity. Do not let them cause you to forget that the client to whom you relate, in whatever capacity you relate to them, that client is human too. The client is not a case number, but a son, a daughter, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, an auntie, or a cousin to somebody. Just like you are those things to somebody. If you or I let God, processes, procedure, pressure, workload, frustration, or what we're going through in our personal lives, if we let these things cause us to be less human, less professional, then shame on us. And if we allowed, then we would have failed. Not because we couldn't do any better, but because we did not do better. Yes, friends, we have to struggle to be our better selves, our best selves. We must be driven by higher values, by more sterling character traits, not by our baser character traits. Sometimes we have to be bigger than the smallness, the pettiness, and the irrationality of our superiors and of those clients that we are dealing with. In other words, my friends, the onus is on us
to see a better world, to dream a better world, and to work for a better world. And if we get lost in this profession and lose sight of those kind of things, then God help us. We have to have a vision for a better day. We have to have a heart for higher service. And we have to want to make a difference, one person at a time. So what I'm telling you is, I'm not saying you're not allowed to struggle. I'm not saying you're not allowed to be overwhelmed. I'm not saying you're not allowed to be frustrated or to be disillusioned, because that's life. And anybody who tells you otherwise is dishonest. But what I am saying is, from where you sit, in this place that you have chosen to be, in this profession that you have chosen to be in, from where you sit, as you do your work, you have to aim high. You have to aim high. One of the greatest tragedies in life is not that some of us aim high and miss the target, but that some of us aim low and hit the target. One of the greatest tragedies in life is not that some of us aim high and miss the target, but that we aim low and hit the target. So boys and girls, we have to aim high. We have to have a vision for a better day and a better world. A better life for ourselves and a better life for our clients. So point number 2, aim high. With your attitudes, aspirations, operation and service, aim high. Be human. Be professional. And the third point, whether the client is a stranger or an acquaintance, you, for that day or for that season, must be their loved one. You must be their valued family member, their best friend. And what do loved ones and family members and best friends do? They seek what is best. So you've got to seek what is best for the client, no matter how much they yuck up your vexation. You got to seek what's best. Because in our work, in our profession, if we do not employ love, then what we do is formless and meaningless. Don't believe me, I didn't make that up. Listen to what Jesus said. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another as I have loved you. John chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. So what you have to do in your being human is you have to make that client more human by the way that you love and honor them. In conclusion, I say again, try your best to represent the best of human qualities, not the worst, and the best of your profession. Make your parents, grandparents, and teachers, and all those who poured into you, make them proud. We have a wonderful country here in the Bahamas. We got our problems like everybody else. Problems are a part of the real world. But we have something here that is precious, that is special. We must cherish it, honor it, and seek always to preserve it. And while we can't influence the whole of Bahama land, we can start in our sphere, where we work, where we are called to serve, by seeking to do the best we can there. And if you didn't pick it up already, that's all I'm asking you to do. Do your best in your realm. I wish to commend you here gathered for the fine work that you do. I wish to commend you for how you have held the fort together and what you have accomplished. Many of you sacrificed much, work hard, and I want you to continue it. As always, there are some of you who could do better. I don't know who you are, but you know who you are. And if you could be a better person, a better member of this profession, then you consider seriously doing so for the good of yourself, your soul, and for humanity. I want you to have a good year. I want you to have the best year you ever had. I want you to strive to be your best self. I want you to be the best human being that you can be, so that you can influence your peers and your clients on their own journey toward humanity. I wish to thank you, Mr. Dean, and the family of the Cathedral for welcoming me and for sponsoring this service every year. I want to thank you, sir, for the passion that you employ in doing so. You see, all of us where we are have to seek to do our best. And so I come back to you. What you fix your mind on will determine your words and actions. Therefore, I am calling on you to aim high and to keep the words of St. Paul before you. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is anything at all worthy of excellence, if there is anything at all worthy of praise, then you think about these things. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
On behalf of the Honorable Chief Justice, we want to also extend our welcome to Justice Marva MacDonald Bishop, President of the Court of Appeal of Jamaica, and Mr. Keith Bishop, her husband and attorney at law, the Justice Maxine Jackson, Judge of the Supreme Court of Jamaica, and Mr. Jordan Jarrett, Senior Judicial Counsel, Court of Appeal, Jamaica. We welcome you warmly to the opening of the legal year here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Of course, we welcome you to our beautiful Bahamas. The greeting of peace. The kingdom of God is justice, peace, joy, and love, inspired by the Holy Spirit. The peace of the Lord be always with you. Can we have the hymn once again, please?
Life and mercy.
Let us pray. Lord, have mercy upon us.
Christ, have mercy upon us.
Lord, have mercy upon us.
Christ, have mercy upon us.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Lord God, the judge of all mankind, we pray for those who are called to minister justice among your sons and daughters, to clear the innocent and to convict and punish the guilty. Give them prudence and discernment, that without fear or favor they may justly and mercifully fulfill their duties as in your sight, to the good of our nation and the glory of your name, through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
O God, the King of righteousness, we bring to you in prayer those who bear responsibility for maintaining law and order in our land, especially judges, magistrates, and the police, that the innocent may be protected, evildoers be brought to account, the rights of all defended, and that we as a nation may enjoy the blessing of a just, free, and peaceful society, through Jesus Christ our Lord. God and Father of us all, graciously bless this our nation, and send out your light and your truth to lead us in the paths of justice and peace. Give wisdom to those who exercise authority in the government of our land. Remove all cause of contention and strife from among us. Unite us in the service of your kingdom, and make us a God-fearing people, obeying your laws and living together in brotherly love and peace. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Before I pronounce the blessing, I would like once again to wish you all a happy new year and to wish you a good year in your profession. I encourage you to do your best, to have a vision for what is best for yourselves and others. If you could have that vision, you could transform your profession into even higher heights. God bless you. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
May the Lord in his great mercy bless you and give you his wisdom and love. May he nourish you with the riches of his grace and make you to persevere in all good works. May he order your steps every day and direct you in the paths of love and peace. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon you and remain with you now and always.
Amen.
I pledge my allegiance to the flag of the Commonwealth of which it stands, one people, united in love and service.
Now, if you are just tuning in, we welcome you to this live broadcast of the opening of the legal year for 2025. The church service at Christ Church Cathedral just coming to an end. And you see the procession coming out, led by the Provost Marshal, Shanta Knowles, the Commissioner of the Royal Bahamas Police Force.
Yes.
And there's a very special process that happens after this, right outside of the church service, correct, Ramona, Fox and Seymour?
Yes, they ought to be now heading into the inspection of the honorary guard, and that is a ceremonial procedure, and it's one of honor. And again, just understanding the Provost Marshal, that the Commissioner stands in place of her officers. They are charged with ensuring that there's law and order, and also particularly carrying out the judgments of the court. And so that's her symbolism and representation.
So we can look at this as a reaffirmation, a recommitment to doing what is right and keeping law and order.
What is proper. So in essence, it is her presence is there, and once the Chief Justice inspects and obviously approves of them, meaning then that they are in good standing and they're ready for the year ahead. I think a lot of people were saying perhaps we were speaking a bit too much. They didn't get to get too much commentary on the parade, but here you would have the Royal Bahamas Police Force band, the different complements of that division, again, preparing and leading up now for the inspection.
Right, because people have to remember the importance of the interrelationship between the police and the courts.
Yes. It's also important for persons to note, you would see there that the honorary guard, that they're wearing white gloves, and that is quite important as well. That's a symbolism as to clean hands, purity, and so you would notice that as well. That's why they're wearing that.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Now, the Provost Marshal in this case is the staff. Is on the staff of a commander charged with the maintaining of order and with other police functions within a command. And this is the first time that we have the first female Commissioner of Police, Shanta Knowles, acting in this capacity.
Yes.
And this is, she's empowered by Section 72 of the Supreme Court Act.
Yes.
All right? The Provost Marshal is also mandated by statute to perform certain duties in the court system. The Commissioner of Police acting as the Provost Marshal symbolizes the role that the members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force play, which is really what you said already.
Yes.
Good.
I think you would notice as well, someone ought to be bringing out the mace. That would perhaps be present as well, and that is a royal symbol. Again, we can't forget our heritage, and we are certainly connected to the Westminster system.
There are two oars, I understand, a royal oar and the...
Then the mace.
Yes. Right.
And I believe at Sir Burton Hall, we have a very unique oar that he would have had commissioned and presented the 30th of August 2007. And the reason why it's in the shape of an oar is because it's a nod to our nautical heritage. Of course, we're an archipelago, a group of islands, and so it's fitting. We have, I think, the largest ship registry, or one of the largest ship registries in the world.
Definitely.
And so we have the coat of arms and our symbol on that oar, and so that's just a nod to our history and tradition. And of course, the mace dates back to however long. I mean, I don't even think we have a year on that, but it is again a symbol by high officials, and there you have the setting up and preparation by the honorary guard. These officers ought to be chosen amongst the very best.
Absolutely.
In terms of their conduct over the year, as well as their presentation. Yes.
This is all again, of course, their motto is courage, integrity, loyalty. And this is a reaffirmation, of course, of their commitment to what is right and what is good, as you said before.
Yes.
And we know after certain things that happened last year, it's critical that this is seen to be what it is.
Certainly, and it's very important.
Beautiful, isn't it? Look at it.
Yes,
Great
certainly
shot
is.
right there.
And how they're very straight and something to really be proud of.
And really it is. It is.
Yes. I think we were speaking earlier as well during the service. It's so good that, we still begin the year with a church service, and as well having the various denominations present and participating as well. That shows unity as well.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
believe they're now gearing up and preparing for the Chief Justice to come and to inspect the guard this moment. This is also a very historic lane that we're on, George Street, quite historic as well. Christchurch Cathedral is present there.
Yeah, and for people who do not know, in order for a place to be called a city, there has to be a cathedral at the center of it.
Yes.
So the cathedral is the hub for the city of Nassau.
It certainly is, and helps to give that definition and grounding. There you go. You see now the mace, the oar, just as well, and the Supreme Court justices. And the Chief Justice will certainly, at this point, you can see he's leading the justices, and he is now about to inspect.
And the emblems on the back of the robes there, that seems to be within the Bohemian color.
Yes, it is. Again, a nod to where you are, your country. And again, you would notice that the Chief Justice is likewise wearing white gloves. Again, a symbolism of purity, of clean hands.
Now, as we see all of this pomp and pageantry, I'm sure there are a lot of young people out there who might be fascinated and may even be considering a career in law. What advice would you give to young people who think that this might be the right avenue for them?
Main thing would be go into it for the right reasons. Many people, when they think of a profession, they think, okay, lawyer, money. But ultimately, I always remember my pupil master used to say, Ramona, this is about people. As attorneys, we meet people at their worst. Because if they didn't have problems, they wouldn't come to us. We solve problems. And so you have to be sure that that's what you want to do, because you carry it with you. Persons say, well, leave it at the office. Not all the time you can do so. You carry the burdens. You're also counsel as well, not just attorney. And so be sure that you're willing to devote that time and your life to doing that, to solving people's problems and carrying them as well. Again, it's a beautiful thing. You see that they're lined up there, and you're now seeing also attorneys from the inner and outer bar. I believe that would be King's Counsel just coming out of view of our frame.
And you said there are 1,500 attorneys on the roll right now?
And approximately, yes. Perhaps a bit more. So, yes. And so this is quite symbolic, beautiful. You also have the band. They're also in attention as well. And bearing in mind, it's quite breezy, but nonetheless, they are standing to attention.
Well, it's the discipline of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, particularly in moments like this, that is always a wonderful thing to see.
Very captivating. And again, we can't stress enough, for the first time, we have a female provost marshal, and she is standing right there to the right of the Chief Justice.
Yes.
His right hand. We would have had a brief exercise, just a symbolic showing of the Chief Justice that they are ready and able to perform their duties.
And here we go.
Yeah. He was inspected.
Immediately behind him, there was Marshall. This must be a wonderful attraction for tourists who get to see this because it's different than where
Certainly from the United States, yes.
Yes, in the Commonwealth countries of Canada, a little bit more similar, but...
And it's good, I think, for all persons, particularly, as you said, tourists, to see another country's culture and on display as well. You see already the phones are out, persons are taking videos and photos, because this is something to commemorate.
It is.
To remember. You ought to remember where you were when the first female provost marshal was along with the Chief Justice and inspecting the guard. Obviously, he's pleased because he has not stopped or made any comments as yet. And what is beautiful as well is look at the justices as well as they stand looking on as well. And so he has the support of his justices. That is a symbol of that as well. They are present and they are also standing behind and backing him. So it's a beautiful thing. All positions have some symbolism.
It was interesting to see, I guess those of us who have short memories forget that just a few years ago there was COVID. And I understand that in-person trials only began in 2023, recommenced in 2023. And that's not too long ago.
And fortunately, unfortunately, the Court of Appeal hasn't even commenced in-person trials as yet. And so that is certainly an issue, and we wait to see in a few short days or weeks, I think on the 20th, there will be a changing of the guard there, where the present president, Justice John Isaacs, I believe he demits office. And so it will be interesting to see whether that will change and whether we will return back to the highest court in the land. I believe the inspection is just about completed.
And after that, they will take a short promenade, literally around the corner here to Margaritaville, where...
We are set up, yeah.
Exactly.
And waiting for them for, of course, the speech from the main aspect would be the speech.
And we will hear from the Attorney General, the President of the Bar Association, and then the Chief Justice.
All right. I believe he has given his approval, and so you would note now the change in the tone.
Yes, a very celebratory one.
Yes, because they have now been approved. The Chief Justice has said that they are satisfactory, and so honor is restored. Another year. You would notice, well, the precision, how they are passing through. And so, again, this is quite beautiful. I think Mr. Reed should know as well, traditionally, or for many years, this was done through Bank Lane. And so there has been an evolution or change that now the inspection is right after the church, and then we make our way, or the judiciary would make their way here to the hotel. And this is perhaps well, this is considered an official sitting of the
Absolutely.
court, the first sitting.
The first of the
yes,
legal year.
the first of the legal year. Traditionally used to be in the Supreme Court building, but they, I think, to accommodate more people.
And generally
Space.
kept within the hour.
Yes.
1 hour. Well, of course, tomorrow in the papers we'll have these wonderful pictures from this event.
Certainly. History, again, we're making history. Oh, nice maneuver. I think it's wonderful how they're between the buildings as well. And so the acoustics, the sound just seems richer.
And our drone flyer, Neville Smith, is really doing his job today.
Certainly is. I'm a bit biased because he is my producer. So,
For the legal brief,
yes,
I got you.
so
Okay.
very good job, Neville.
And now,
Yes.
and who is leading this procession right now? With that is the Royal Mace, is it? Or
It certainly is, and that would be one of the marshals of the court. And so again, they all ultimately fall under the court's administration, and they are charged and carrying. You're seeing with the shades that would be Justice John Isaacs. We're also seeing the other justices of the Supreme Court as they're filing past. Justice Forbes again with the shades. He's stationed in the northern region. A few of them.
Yes,
Justice
Franklin
Collicott
Williams
Stubbs.
there, I think, yes.
Yes. Justice Collicott Stubbs. Some of the new justices
And
also
then,
present
as you
there.
say in the green, the Industrial Tribunal,
Yes.
right?
The last justice there would have been Justice Leigh Farquharson, newly appointed. Yes. And these are now the registrars of the Court of Appeal in the Supreme Court. Yeah, this shot is wonderful. These would be the magistrates in the back here, I believe. Yeah. Good to see quite a number of young officers as well.
Yes.
Participating in this ceremony. Yes.
Precision and timing, everything. Like the intermittent levels that they have in between them, 2 or 3 seconds in between
Yes.
each group moving.
Yes. I think on our screens now we're seeing Magistrate Shaka Seville, Miles Parker, who's more to the front, one of the taller magistrates. He's an acting magistrate presently, civil in Night Court. So
When they come to the end of George Street, the police, they appear to be heading back to Rawson Square.
Yes, I believe so.
Because I understand
and now our colleagues will be making their way here, which is now officially a court for these proceedings. They're making their way here. And you would notice that the vehicles will collect the various judges, and then they would just bring them here, and where we would set up court and deal with our first court hearing.
Well, we have another clip that we'd like for our viewers to see and for our listeners to hear. If you would bear with us right now, please.
I believe so. I believe they wish to show us the...
Members of the Judiciary, legal fraternity, and government officials gather for the official opening of the legal year 2025, which, according to Chief Justice the Honorable Sir Ian Winder, took great effort to plan.
The opening as it is a renewal, a report to stakeholders, and by stakeholders. That is the Judiciary, the Bar, the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General himself will give his take on what transpired over the year, what was foreshadowed. Likewise, the Bar, and of course, I will give a report as to what transpired over the last year.
The event begins at Christchurch Cathedral and then moves to the Supreme Court. Winder says there he will reveal his plans while highlighting the progress made over the last year.
Yeah, the Court Services Act came into effect, which has impacted the way we do business. There have been changes in terms of processes, reform in terms of criminal procedure and electronic case management. So there have been changes that have impacted the way the judiciary operates. We've added new courts, so we've had a full year.
And he touted a decrease in the backlog of the judicial system.
We've put a dent in it. There have been a lot of plea deals over the last year. There have been a lot of matters that acknowledged have been entered, and trials have progressed. We've added new courtrooms. So backlogs on the civil and criminal side have seen some adjustments.
Speaking of the Supreme Court, Ansbacher House now has a refreshed look, thanks to Troy Aiken of Aiken Photography.
And we took all the old photographs, tore them out of the old frames, quite decrepit, aged, had their time, and they were small. So I was able to restore them and print them on archival canvas to last 85 years before they fade or yellow. In fact, they won't yellow. And then we have some beautiful LED lights to accentuate the portraits.
The new photos, he says, gives the court a new look while capturing history to give all that visit an immense sense of pride.
When you come in and you see the representation done well of our historical Chief Justice, and especially our present Chief Justice, and it's done to that scale, you immediately, it evokes a sense of, wow, that's awesome. That's my Chief Justice. You know what I mean? As opposed to a bunch of little 11 by 14s.
Now with a new look, Chief Justice Winder turns his focus to the year ahead.
Just to see some of the reforms that have taken place take root, and to see if we can, if the plans that we've put in place can actually develop, specifically the criminal case management rules, and to see how if that will accelerate the impact and the pace at which criminal trials take place.
As the legal year gets underway, he remains committed on ensuring that the justice system serves the people with integrity and efficiency. Devontae Hanna, ZNS Network News.
That report there from Devontae Hanna outlining some changes that have been done within the Supreme Court at Ansbacher House and the refurbishment, if you will, of portraits of former Chief Justices. And the events here at Margaritaville Resort are about to begin. It'll be the first sitting of the legal year. But Ramona,
yes,
we have a special guest right now.
We
right?
certainly do. They're coming in, and we're starting out very well. We have the Chief Magistrate with us. And congratulations. I believe you've been confirmed.
I have.
Yes.
Sometime last year, I think it was March of last year.
Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
And this is Mr. Roberto Reckley, Chief Magistrate. And just we wish to find out from you how things are going to perhaps manage more logistically with the movement of the family court from the magistrate's court? Does that mean that there'll be more room? Are you still going to be in control of the family court? How does that work?
Well, certainly with the move to the family court, what you will see is the whole purpose of it was to have a different environment that was more conducive to less combative atmosphere, which is better for remedying any family issues. The logistic aspect of it in terms of the move is not that significant in terms of the magistrates. About 3 magistrates will be going down there, and with their support staff. So you'll just find that the persons who need to go to the family court, they will find their way down to Bernard Road. Yes, everything in terms of the magistrate court, because it is a magistrate court, as a chief magistrate, it's still under my remit.
Yes.
At least one deputy chief magistrate will be down there, also giving a hands-on, always knowing exactly what's going on in terms of operational issues. But as a chief magistrate, obviously, I have overall control.
So you'll be making that trek once or twice at least
once
to
or
check,
twice,
to
yes.
check
Yes.
and see what's happening.
Yes, but there are competent magistrates who will be on deck, and also, again, there's a deputy chief magistrate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it also so that the juvenile court will also be moving down there?
That is... Sorry?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that is the plan. The facilities are there. There's still some touching up that needs to be done, but eventually, again, just like you asked, the juvenile court will be substantively there. Again, removing it from an area where you might have adult individuals coming to court, again, so an environment that is less, again, combative or more conducive to remedies along the line of a juvenile justice.
I think persons would want to know right away, is that to happen tomorrow? Or when does that take place, the movement? So if I have a matter for magistrate, for juvenile court, or a bound over application or a maintenance application, do I still make my way to Nassau Street or do I go Bernard Road? When does that occur?
That's an excellent question, and I think it's a fair one because, as you know, we already had an opening.
This is opening, yes,
right?
yes.
Fair question. In terms of the family matters, maintenance, as you asked, bound over custody, we expect that to be up and running ideally by Monday, the 13th of January, 2025.
So should persons proceed directly there or should they call for, how does it work? Because, there's a vast difference if you make your way in time for 10 o'clock to go Nassau Street or Bernard Road.
Ideally, everything now will be coming from Bernard Road, ideally. But this very brief transition that we're going through, where we're still in the process of doing the physical move, maybe just out of abundance of caution, you can feel free to call Nassau Street and they can advise you. But I can tell you, over the last 2 weeks since the opening, there's been movements of files and persons and personnel and the resources that are needed. And so ideally we want to be up and running by Monday coming.
So as well, I think we were discussing earlier about
You asked another question, just to be fair, not to cut you off. The second part of the juvenile, that may take a bit longer for those courts to be...
So a person should still make their way to Nassau Street for juvenile court.
That, Senior Magistrate Allen has now conduct of all juvenile matters in court number 1 Nassau Street. That will continue until Chief Justice advises otherwise.
With respect to the gun court, I know that Acting Magistrate Lennox Colby, his court 15, would sometimes start at 2 p.m.
Yes.
With this shift in movement, are you then going to institute or have that court now to begin starting at 10?
Again, excellent question. I'm glad you're asking these. These are all issues that need to be addressed. With that move, as you correctly observed, that opens up at least one more court.
Yes.
Because if you weren't aware, Court 5 sits in that space.
Yes.
Drug court, if you want to call it that, in the morning, and Court 15 somewhat in the afternoon till the evening.
Yes.
So with the move now of at least 2 magistrates, that opens up another courtroom. So certainly Magistrate Colby now, who primarily hears gun matters, we don't like to use the term gun court, but that's what it's called loosely. But that does open up a court now for him to sit in from 10 a.m. to regular hours, which would say 5.
Right.
So excellent question.
Chief Magistrate Rackley, and again, congratulations. But what other challenges that we have not mentioned yet have you been experiencing, and do you think will be remedied with the movement of the family court to Bernard Road?
Well, Well, you don't really, to answer that, I'd say you wouldn't really appreciate it until it happens. And I say that to say that because we've been conducting business in the magistrate court so long, I don't know if we ever really accepted that there were obstacles or challenges. It was just the way of doing business, and we did business accordingly. But I think now that we see that there's something different that can be done, now you can look back and say, well, why didn't we always do it like this? Now I see this is a whole different environment. You don't have to bring children around adult, quote unquote, I don't want to say criminal persons who are charged with criminal charges. Keep the juvenile separate from that. Why is someone who's coming just to get maintenance for their child or custody or access having to be in an environment, again, where there may be more contentious issues? So I think the future, or now that we have the actual family courts down there, it's a great opportunity. But I can't really say there was any obstacles before that prevented us from doing anything, because again, business as usual, it didn't stop anything from happening. But now we can appreciate that one exists. It's a much better environment.
I think one thing that I always took note of is, because of the court complex, children were not allowed to allowed in the building. Now that it's a family court, are you, as chief magistrate, are you going to allow then children, mothers can come and children can be present as well? Because I don't know, how will that work?
Thank you again. I don't know if you were fortunate enough to attend the opening, but there's actually a nursery in the family complex down at
Excellent.
So excellent question, and to answer that, the short answer is yes.
Yeah, excellent. So for those mothers to know, coming with maintenance issues, you have a minor child, you don't have to leave the child or be beholding to other people to care. You can, their nursery facility. Is that free of charge, or there's a cost?
Well, that is, to my knowledge, is free. Unless something changes at this point, it's free, because again, it's just really a space for
holding once you're in court. So don't think you could just come in and leave your children
and go about the day.
Go for the day. No,
no, not like that. No. But I'm glad. Obviously, you are aware. So certainly, as someone who has a wide range of practices in your capacity, you would appreciate that same thing you talked about no children being involved.
Yes.
That has to be very frustrating. So this presents an opportunity now for things to go a bit more smooth for persons seeking justice or seeking remedies in terms of family issues.
As well as, I would think as well, if magistrates and family matters wish to hear from children, if they're Gillett competent, they perhaps would be present, and there's a more friendly and relaxed atmosphere for them to be present if the magistrate wishes to hear. And so that's very good.
Again, you're asking questions, making excellent points. Let me ask you this, to be fair. Did you have an opportunity to visit when they opened? Did you have an opportunity to go down to Bernard Road?
No. So unfortunately, I had court.
No, that's fine. It's because even the way the courts are set up, it's not really a courtroom per se. It's more like a mediation atmosphere or center. There's no bench where I sit on one side, you sit on one side, and the judge sits overlooking anybody. It's set up really to
like a family setting and less adversarial.
Exactly.
Yes.
Less pressure.
Yeah. And it should open up persons, from emotional state or mental state, because that adversarial aspect doesn't exist. So they should be more open to reaching the remedies that they're trying to
Will court orderlies still be in the courtroom?
No, well, obviously it's a court. So you still need that law and order and security aspects of it. So certainly that still exists, yes. And because we still have to have the safety of all persons in mind at all times.
It's been wonderful having you.
Thank you for having me.
I don't get to see you enough.
I know.
Get to see you. Sometimes you're on circuit as well, and so I don't get to see you much.
And I was just speaking to one of the persons of the brief, one of the persons behind the scene, and I was asking what's going on with it, and they told me you were back.
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
And I was asking this, and I didn't see it for a while. He said they took a break, so it's good to know that you're back.
Yes, sir.
You always have informative discussions.
Yes.
And as always, when you're in private practice now, you're still in private practice, but now that you introduce the media aspect, we really appreciate what you have to offer to the legal community. Continue to do well.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
Great having you.
Thank you for joining us, and may you have a great opening, a great year, really.
Yeah, we're looking forward to hear what the Chief Justice has to say in terms of any future visions or plans that he has going forward. All right?
Yes, sir.
And I think we have already mentioned, but seeing that I have the opportunity, I'll say it once again, the civil jurisdiction of the magistrates is now up to $20,000.
Yes.
I think persons are starting to know, but I'll say it every chance they get for persons who don't know. It's no longer $5,000. Feel free to bring your claims in a civil jurisdiction for up to $20,000. And I won't say lawyers' costs have increased too, but I won't say that. I won't mention how much that is.
I was about to say 5,000 now, no longer 500. They gave us a little bump.
Little bump, all right?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thanks for joining us.
Great.
Great.
Thanks for
and it's now beginning to fill up. You probably can see behind us right now. Here in the ballroom at the Margaritaville Resort at the Point. And any moment now we expect for the Chief Justice and the justices to come in.
I think we may have a moment once they're coming in, if we can, to just let persons give names and maybe the divisions that they're working in. So you begin to put the face with the name.
Absolutely great, yeah.
That doesn't mean approach them now when you see them to church or in public. Justice. No, certainly not. Please do not do that. But at least you would know, obviously, to defer and to be quite respectful.
But it was very interesting to hear the Chief Magistrate tell us some of the things, the developments. And thank you for your, obviously, very in-depth experience to be able to ask those kinds of questions, very practical questions.
Yes.
That people need the answers to.
Yeah, they certainly do, because with this opening, obviously persons would know, they would say, Ms. Maxson, where do I have to go? Because you will have dates already set in advance. So many persons are ready before the court, juvenile courts, and mothers need to know, because again, to navigate, to know, do I go to Nassau Street or do I go Bernard Road?
And I think people that aren't in that kind of situation don't really appreciate what all has to happen in order for you to get there and get
be
through
on
it.
time, because court starts at 10 o'clock.
That's true.
And so you don't know if your attorney is there early, your name is called, you don't want your matter, a warrant to be issued because you're not on time. And so it can be a lot of things, factors.
Good, great.
Yes.
And if we will just say again who's going to be speaking today, it will be the Attorney General, Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Yes.
Also, and his address is expected to last about 15 minutes.
Yes.
And then we will hear from the President of the Bar Association, Khalil Parker, and he's expected to speak for about 15 minutes. And then the Chief Justice, the Honorable Sir Ian Winder, will be the final speaker. And after that, we'll be wrapping up and be allowing you and your colleagues to have a little camaraderie. We now have another guest who is coming soon, and if you would care to... If you would care to introduce the next guest, please, Ramona.
You're for us?
Anyway, as you can see, this room is filling up now. We're filled with lawyers, so there are about 1,500 people on the roll, and as many of them that can fit in here are certainly trying to. The room is almost filled to capacity at this point. Again, we'll be hearing once the justices enter. Good? No? Okay, great. But I really enjoyed that sort of dialogue you had with Chief Magistrate Reckley. And, I don't get into the courts often, so to even see these people is an interesting thing to me. And and the numbers of people who are actually in the judiciary, I think we have to appreciate them. And hopefully, Bahamians will have a greater appreciation for all of what you do after this. But as we're here at this point, any other comments you have right now, Ramona?
That's a good sign. I mean, persons took time out, because I find sometimes as we get older or more mature in the profession, we tend to skip this pomp and pageantry.
I have a few friends who are skipping it or say, I better show before they forget I'm actually part of it.
or decide to say, I could still extend my vacation a bit. But it's good to see that we seem to have a good mix of
quite a few
more
young
mature.
lawyers.
Yeah, quite a few. As I said to you before, those who have just been called, they certainly will seize this opportunity, and it's very good as well. And it's good to see here. And dealing with it, just so much transition and change that is taking place in our judiciary, and it raises your level of optimism that we're moving in the right direction, that we're going to get dates swifter. I know many persons are listening in and saying, please get dates on. I always say to my clients, yes, we now have new judges on board. They seem to have now clear-cut divisions, so it's no longer you getting dates and sometimes it's being vacated or justice saying, I'm no longer in that division. The file is moving around. So we seem to be moving in the right direction. There, just waiting for them to come in. But again, a number of magistrates and registrars are present. You can begin to see, and persons can always note as well from the wigs. These would be, we are persons, we're considered a part of the outer bar. And then the bigger wigs.
Explain the inner and outer bar for people who don't understand.
Well, in England, those are in the inner bar.
In the temple, right?
Not the temples, but King's Council. It used to be Queen's Council for the longest time, but obviously the death of Queen Elizabeth, we now have King Charles. And so they're King's Councils, and they're considered a part of the inner bar, and more so considered to be persons who would give counsel if called upon to the king. Yes, we're more of the outer bar, and so you would denote that from the smaller wigs. And so the larger the wig, it's deemed more influential. In certain jurisdictions, they'll say they're the ones who make more money as well. And so I always defer and bow to my colleagues, and I say, okay, it's you. I think this bill is on you. So we have had a number of kings, queens, and kings councils over the years that's increased, and that too has been a change, because for the longest we only had about 6. I think it was just it was Henry Bostwick for the longest. I think he's passed away. L.B. Johnson and Sir Orville. It was only a few. For the longest time, about 6, and then obviously in the past, I think it is 10 years or so, you started to see an increase in the
which
numbers.
it should be as the profession grows.
Yes, as the profession grows, and so that's been great.
I will ask, though, because so many people say that, the legal profession is flooded. Would you agree with that? Do you think there's room for more lawyers in the country?
I believe so. There's always room, and I always, again, bear in mind what my pupil master said to me. He said, Ramona, don't mind the crowd. There's always, the best will float to the top. You don't mind that there are how many. If you're the best, you're going to make it, because you're going to rise.
And many would agree that you are definitely the creme de la creme.
Thank you. So, yes, I think we're seeing on our screen, there's a photo of a magistrate from the Northern Division, Smith. He sits in Grand Bahama.
Okay.
Yes.
It's beginning to look like it's almost standing room only in this ballroom here.
Yeah, and like I said, that's a very, very good sign.
Everyone eager to hear what the Chief Justice will say.
I think as
and
well,
of course, the Attorney General.
And as well,
And
I
the
think
bar president.
The president of the bar.
Yeah.
I think many attorneys want to hear if our concerns are being brought to the table, brought to the fore, and how they certainly would be addressed going forward. Because we have had a plethora of issues, attorneys, not just with fees. I believe there's tabled a Legal Profession Act. The bill is being tabled. I think we're also seeing on the screen Sir Michael Barnett is being greeted by a registrar. He just recently demitted office in June. He's now, I think, he's now at the Law Reform Commission, one of the commissioners. And so certainly a number of issues that we have as a body that hopefully will be tabled, and the Chief Justice will hear those concerns. They're filing in. And this space, like I said before, this is wonderful, because again, we would have been somewhat squeezed in and persons standing all around, and so it does allow or accommodate far more counsels to participate, to hear, and to be a part of.
But this alone, I guess, shows the need for this very new all-in-one complex.
Yes, certainly.
So that everyone can be accommodated in a hopefully very modernized building.
And that would be beautiful as well. Can you imagine just walking up? I think then it would be Charlotte Street, just walking and from there to Christ, or from Christchurch Cathedral and then back again.
Mm-hmm.
So that would certainly be beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. What else would you like to see in the legal profession as we move forward?
I think for us, a lot of my colleagues, and I'm seeing the registrar, he's speaking and he's going to make his way over here to us, acting registrar Ronaldo Toot. But certainly I would welcome. We'd like to see perhaps, as I said, more ready dates. I think I've canvassed that already, but practically speaking, I think they're working on that, that whenever we file, that perhaps we get to the point where we actually have a very strict timeline, where if I file something within the month, or I can be assured of a number in a queue and that I am going to be heard at that time, as well as with emergency applications. I believe we would like to see a more refining of that process, a more cohesiveness as to what are urgent matters, not making it perhaps so subjective, depending on who's the duty judge, that they will determine if this matter is urgent or not. I think those things, or perhaps a system where we ought to be heard, and then even if it's preliminarily to say why we believe our matter is urgent, because some things are perhaps lost on paper, can't be fully translated, and if they can just hear us, even if it's just briefly within 10-15 minutes, and then they can determine, well, yes, I'll therefore hear you tomorrow or later on in the day. Those sorts of things, practical things that can make life a little bit easier and better when persons wish to move the courts on an urgent basis.
And now I believe that acting registrar Toot is ready for us.
The force behind this opening. You're almost to the end. Congratulations.
Listen, I can see the end in sight. Thank you both for having me.
Yes, oh my.
As you can see, we have unprecedented numbers. I don't even think the ballroom can hold all the attorneys that we have inside.
I was getting a bit nervous, actually, yes.
I was saying that this is wonderful, but congratulations in advance to you on planning all of this. I mean, I know you've been calling back and forth and to get everything and everyone in place.
Yes.
It's been great.
But just for an idea, how long did it take to actually put all of this together?
To be honest, our planning committee comes together from the September before. So even though you're just seeing the actual physical opening, we start planning the actual annual report. So we start collating all our data, all our statistics from both the Supreme Court and the Magistrates Court. And we put everything together. And even though we're here today, our annual report was released today on our website.
Excellent. So there you go with technology.
Yes.
So that's wonderful.
Everyone can have access to that.
Everyone can have access to that.
And I think it's a lot of firsts for you as well. Newly married, new baby.
New baby.
Let them know. So juggling all of that.
I think my wife and daughter's watching now. It's a problem.
How many weeks?
She's 6 weeks.
Oh, wow. There you go. So new dad, congratulations
Thank
to you.
So I was writing my reports and my notes this morning while holding my young daughter in the left hand. So I'm used to multitasking by now.
We smile about it, but I think it certainly adds something to you that you know what this is about families and about dispensing justice.
And I watch you and you do it very well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But I think we wanted to hear from you, just perhaps a little foreshadowing as to what we can expect from the Chief Justice in his speech.
Great. So, as you know, in 2024, there were first of many. There was the first for the passing of the Court Services Act that gave the judiciary its full autonomy. So you're going to hear about that. You're going to hear on what we've done so far under our brief term of being an independent organization, independent branch of government. I think we're gonna foreshadow the Chief Justice indicating that there is going to be an appointment of a Chief Financial Officer. We haven't had a Chief Financial Officer yet under our new legislative autonomy. So I'm thinking you're going to hear about that. He's going to probably most likely disclose that.
Now, I just want to know, stop you right there. Is that going to be the person that ensures these crown briefs are paid for?
Yes.
Is that the person?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Excellent. I thought many attorneys want to hear that.
Yes.
Because we've been having a little difficulty there.
Yes. And so, as you were previously, prior to passing of the Court Services Act, all of that responsibility lied with the registrar.
Yes.
And it was very, very mundane and difficult for the registrar to both manage the administrative function of judiciary as well as judicial functions of judiciary, because the registrar actually is a judicial officer, and the registrar hears interlocutory applications. And so now the registrar and the registrars, the deputies and their assistants, can manage effectively their registries. So you're going to hear a lot from the Chief Justice this year because we're now autonomous. He's going to actually talk about, most likely, we're going to have to increase filing fees, because now we're now self-governing ourselves and we now have to actually finance some of our own operation.
Now, let's be a little careful.
No, let me give some context to that, right?
Let's be a little careful now.
I want to give context.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's think about this. As you're aware, I'm the manager for the probate registry.
Right.
Probate matters in the Bahamas that values less than $50,000, and this is personality, not real estate. Less than $50,000 are free in the Supreme Court. Free. So that means all of the filings, whether it was contentious or uncontentious, are free. There's $0 that the Bahamas government get from that, notwithstanding the services that the court administers. And so, again, let me give you another example. You have resealing applications. There's one flat rate for resealing applications. And for the purpose of the general public, Julian, what resealing application is, it is a foreign grant, meaning that if a foreigner owns assets in the Bahamas, but they die and resides in a foreign jurisdiction, they probate their estate in that jurisdiction, and then they bring that foreign grant to the Bahamas to be resealed here. So, and I can disclose it because this is public documents. Last year in 2024, I had to sign off on a $20 million asset, resealing asset. Guess how much money the Bahamas government ascertained for that? $100. Because it's a flat rate of $100.
So obviously that is changing now.
It is going to change. And so it's not going to be so onerous that at the end of the day, that it was going to, I would say, limit or restrict access to justice. But we're probably going to do small increments, from probably a resealing from $100 to probably 0.1% of the value of that estate.
I wonder if I could ask, what concerns are there for attorneys like you for that happening?
I just, again, because, and I hope that with this new act, there'll be more transparency discussion before things are implemented.
Public consultation.
Because, again, if you're talking about more so for resealing, yes, but I don't want prices to become prohibitive to persons in filing and presenting. I know, and of course, people will agree with me, because you seem to be taxed at every turn. And so, again, justice.
So can I chime in?
But let me say this, that's fine. To pay, the increase in pay, will there now be a greater increase in terms of efficiency?
Yes, and so again, that's one of the things I anticipate the Chief Justice is going to discuss as well. We have been working for the past 3 months on a e-filing probate platform. Okay. So rather than actually having to physically file a paper document or even create a paper document and upload it inside our ITMS system, the probate platform has now gone to the next level. It's using now artificial intelligence. So let me give you an example. It's going to say the name of the deceased. You give the person name. Who is the person applying? It's going to ask you questions. You just type in the information, and when you're done, it's automatically going to populate the form for you. So it's going to now be more expedient.
Yes.
It's going to be more accessible to persons, so you can actually operate the system from in the Bahamas and outside of the Bahamas.
And two, not having to go and then having your form sent back with errors.
Exactly.
And based on whoever picks it up, they don't have an issue. They have an issue with this and that. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Exactly.
That would be helpful.
Exactly.
But hopefully we can get the system to the point where, too, you can pay online, too.
Yes.
Because I think now we still have to go to the to the building and still
No,
pay?
you were going to pay online.
Okay.
All right.
So they're going to get that sorted out.
I want to share with this. I would have visited Madrid, Spain last year with at the request of the Chief Justice. He invited me. He was invited to a digital conference in Madrid, Spain. And we met with a number of other judges and Chief Justices from around the world. It was sponsored by the IDB. And even on the family division, what we realized on the family division, even within the Caribbean region, uncontested divorces, just the grant, are heard by registrars. They're not judges. They only go to the judges for the purpose of the ancillary application. So if it's uncontested, so those are the things that we've been discussing. We haven't finalized the idea yet, but those are some of the things, ideas we've been discussing.
Yeah, because the Matrimonial Causes Act will therefore have to be amended. And then obviously discussions with the church. Because again, too, I think historically the church has not wanted to make it easier for you to get a divorce.
Which is true.
Because we've talked about non-fault based a ground, non-fault ground, and the church seems to be against that. So again,
they're holding steadfast.
It may be great in Madrid and elsewhere, but I don't know if the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
You can hardly get more Catholic than in Spain.
I was impressed, Julian. I really was impressed when I saw that.
So again, I think our church pastors would be groaning right now, thinking, the family, they're gonna think. But then it's something that we have to consider. I guess we have to look at too. Does it warrant it? How many uncontested matters? Because I do know that things start out as uncontested, and then some way they become very contentious.
We now take you to the first sitting of the legal year.
His Lordship, the Honorable Chief Justice Sir Ian Winder, and Justices of the Supreme Court. Wait. All manner of questions.
Yeah.
Justices entering the court along with the justice.
Our cameras will focus on that part of the court in just a moment.
And so
Here we go.
They're now filing in, and this is symbolic as you would do in court. Whenever the judge enters, all rise. You stand until they are seated, and that's a sign of deference and respect.
Absolutely. And like we said, this is an official court sitting.
This is the first sitting for the year. It certainly is. And that voice you would have heard is the Chief Clerk, Nolan Scavala, works along with the Chief Justice.
Good. We take it now completely to the court.
Yes.
Mr. Attorney. May it please your lordship, judges of the Supreme Court, might I also acknowledge the President and Justices of the Court of Appeal, President and members of the Industrial Tribunal, registrars, the Chief Magistrate and other magistrates, the President of the Bar Association, Madam Director of Legal Affairs, and the Director of Public Prosecution, Commissioners, Law Reform and Revision Commission, colleagues at the public and the private bar, special and distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to stand before you today as we commemorate the opening of a new legal year. The occasion is time-honored tradition in our legal fraternity, where we pause to not only recognize the progress that we have made throughout the preceding year to uphold justice, equity, and the rule of law, but also renew and affirm our commitment to continue to uphold these principles. As practitioners, we are custodians of the law, Today, we reaffirm our dedication to serving the people of this great nation. Above all, we recommit to act in the interest of justice, whether in rendering advice, in our representation before the court, or any aspect of our service. Today, I give a charge to our noble profession. We, as legal and judicial officers, must strive for excellence. I want to recognize the members of the judiciary. We all know that it is not an easy job, but it is a vital and effective rule of law in our country. I have spoken in the past about challenges that we've had with respect to timeliness of rendering of decisions. We are still experiencing delays in receiving decisions and judgments that in some instances may be prejudicial to those who are looking for justice. To have an effective judicial system, we must have a firm commitment to rendering decisions in a timely and an efficient manner. In support of the judiciary, I would like to render a challenge to the inner bar. Being a King's Counsel is a prestigious appointment to attorneys often considered leaders in their legal field. And as we know, it certainly allows for greater remuneration. But there's also an obligation to give back to the legal community. Between the Magistrates Court and the Supreme Court, we have approximately 200 weeks of vacation of judges annually. Think about it, that's 4 years where decisions aren't being rendered and matters aren't being heard. This is 200 weeks. I challenge the members of the inner bar to step up and fill this gap. Embrace short-term judicial appointments to assist with ensuring that matters before the court are heard expeditiously. With respect to the private bar, you have an obligation to assist society and to provide representation to those less fortunate. I encourage you to be more committed to pro bono work in support of our civil society, in support of our not-for-profits, as well as our citizens who cannot render and afford competent advice. Embrace the legal aid clinic at the Eugene DePuch Law School, and those law firms who are able to sponsor your own legal aid clinics. These are all obligations of our profession to give back and provide necessary assistance to those who may need it the most. These are just some ideas on how we as a profession should commit as we strive for excellence. 2024 was filled with many triumphs, but also many challenges. However, we have made significant strides in the administration of justice. Last year, we foreshadowed significant reforms in support of the judiciary, including making foundational upgrades to the court's infrastructure. Today, I can report that we have officially opened the Family and Juvenile Court Complex on Bernard Road. This complex houses both the Supreme Court and Magistrate Court facilities, inclusive of the family and probate registries, along with supporting central government agencies such as the police and social services. We have also completed the acquisition of the property located at 50 and 52 Shirley Street, along with the Rodney Bain building, will be developed into a new state-of-the-art Supreme Court complex. We have received the demolition permit for the Rodney Bain building and will proceed with its removal in short order. We are finalizing plans to commence construction and hope that these will be out for tender this calendar quarter. We also recognize the need for the independence of the judiciary in upholding the rule of law. In that regard, the Court Services Act of 2023 came into effect on the 1st of July, 2024. The judiciary is now officially operating as an administratively independent body managed autonomously from the central government. Congratulations, Chief Justice. We remain committed to providing the judiciary with the tools necessary for the effective and the efficient administration of justice. My Lord, I wish to publicly congratulate and thank those long-serving officers who have recently retired from the office of the Attorney General. My Lord, we had a total of 11 officers who have retired, who collectively had 333 years of practice at the office of the Attorney General. These officers work tirelessly to serve the country with humility and dedication, prioritizing the interest of our country. I especially thank retired Director of Legal Affairs, Ms. Antoinette Bonamy, for her leadership and guidance over 38 years at the Office of the Attorney General. Ms. Bonamy started with the Office of the Attorney General in 1986. I was 12 years old. Her tenure included civil litigation, criminal prosecution, legislative drafting, legal cooperation and international assistance, and of course, the management of scores of attorneys at the Office of the Attorney General. I want to personally thank Ms. Bonamy for her support and commitment to the Office of the Attorney General. I congratulate her on a noble career. My Lord, I also want to highlight some other notable changes at the Office of the Attorney General. Dania Parker Wallace has been appointed as the new Director of Legal Affairs. Many of you would note that DLA Parker Wallace has a reputation of excellence at the Office of the Attorney General, and I am excited about your leadership. Thank you very much for accepting. Ms. Cordell Frazier has been appointed as the first female constitutional director of public prosecutions. As acting DPP, Ms. Frazier demonstrated exceptional leadership, continuing the growth and development of that department and advancing a mandate to conclude criminal matters and being a fearless prosecutor. Ms. Frazier has the respect of her colleagues, the criminal bar, as well as the judiciary, and I congratulate you. We have a change at Permanent Secretary, my Lord. Ms. Anya Simonet has moved on to the Ministry of Works. I welcome Sonia Comer as the acting Permanent Secretary at the Office of the Attorney General. P.S. Comer is no stranger to the Office of the Attorney General, as she was Deputy Permanent Secretary and Undersecretary at the OAG, and I look forward to working with her. And we welcome back, my Lord, Permanent Secretary Cecilia Strawn to lead the reforms of the Registrar General Department and to establish the long-awaited Land Registry. These are two very important projects that require senior leadership and support. P.S. Strawn was the PS at OAG when I became Attorney General, so I am no stranger to her. She is no stranger to me, and certainly she has the familiarity that's required to pull off the monumental tasks of the reforms at the Registrar. My Lord, we have undertaken significant reforms within the Office of the Attorney General. We introduced a state-of-the-art case management system to assist in the proper management of our caseload. This system is currently active now in the civil litigation section and will be implemented throughout the office, including the DPP, by the second quarter of 2025. And we have invited members of the private bar, Mr. President, to register with us to allow seamless communication and management of each case that exists. My Lord, we continue to build capacity at the Office of the Attorney General. 5 persons have successfully completed their LLM degrees in legislative drafting, while others are enrolled to take the degree in 2025. We continue to send attorneys to obtain their LLM in maritime studies, and our investment in training goes beyond legal officers. The first cohort of the Eugene DePuch Law School paralegal course graduated this year, many of whom were administrative staff from within our Office of the Attorney General. Mr. President, I encourage you to have the private bar take up this tremendous opportunity to train administrative staff in our various offices. My Lord, I'd like to now make some updates on portfolio responsibilities. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms. Cordell Frazier, has continued to grow the capacity and focus on the effective disposition of criminal matters in the courts. In fact, the DPP office now has twice the number of attorneys today than it did when I became Attorney General. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has, for the year 2024, disposed of 194 matters in the Supreme Court of the Bahamas. These matters, of course, range from murder to armed robbery, rape, unlawful sexual intercourse, possession of unlicensed firearm, arson, burglary, stealing, and vehicular manslaughter. My Lord, at the Office of the Attorney General, we continue to work to meet our international obligations. Notably, last year, the team at the OAG, in collaboration with the regulators, completed and produced our national risk assessment on the country's money laundering threats. The findings of that risk assessment have been shared with the industry. We've prepared a gap analysis, and we prepare for our 5th round of mutual assessment by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. A summary of these key findings and our AML strategy can be found on any of the regulators' websites. My Lord, in December, I, along with a team, appeared before the International Court of Justice in the historic advisory opinion proceedings on the obligations of states with respect to climate change. The Bahamas was among 98 states to make oral statements on the obligations of states to protect the environment from human-induced greenhouse gas emissions, and the legal consequences for the states themselves, my Lord, that have failed to meet these obligations. This will be an historic advisory opinion, as we expect if it goes our way. In 2024, we appointed the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights, whose responsibilities are to assess and evaluate human rights in the Bahamas, to determine and ensure that we comply with our regional and our global obligations, and to investigate any breaches of human rights within our country. My Lord, the Registrar General's Department continues to make progress on its full digitization. To increase productivity and to provide proper infrastructure, the Registrar General Department has moved to the Financial Center building in new state-of-the-art facilities. The Registrar General Department last year launched its Corporate Administrative Registry Services, what we call CARS, a digital portal for corporate registry to allow for the incorporation of new companies, filing of corporate documents, paying of annual fees, all from the comfort of your offices, without having to physically visit the Registrar General Department. The scope of these services expand by the month as we add new tools to the portal. And during this year, in 2025, the Registrar General will pilot a similar system for the civil registry. We will call it CROSS, and this pilot will start immediately, or start in April, and be fully implemented by the end of this calendar year. Long awaited, within the first quarter of this year, my Lord, we intend to bring into force the Registry of Records Act and the Registry of Companies Act, along with the Compendium of Intellectual Property legislation that we passed last year. Consequently, as a result, we will introduce a separate registrar for the Companies Registry, a separate registrar for the Records Registry, and a separate registrar for the Intellectual Property Office to allow for the focused oversight, management, and attention needed to discharge their statutory functions. My Lord, in the past year, our litigation team has successfully reduced the number of habeas corpus applications being filed against the government, to the chagrin, I know, of some sitting behind me. They do this by meeting with the detention center and the Department of Immigration on a weekly basis to ensure that fundamental rights of individuals are protected. We intend to implement similar proactive strategies with other agencies of the government in order to reduce the government's exposure to litigation. Our Chambers section continues to represent the government on multiple commercial, financing, and conveyancing matters, with what seems to be an ever-increasing level of complexity to transactions in our country. In particular, we are happy to report, my Lord, that we are reaching the final stages of the Arawak Homes Regularization of Legal Title project, a project that began more than 10 years ago. In the next few weeks, we intend to issue conveyances to the first tranche of homeowners, with others to follow. We continue to digitize and revolutionize the private bar's access to government services. As you may recall, at last opening, we announced material upgrades to the Bahamas Laws Online website, which I think the private sector appreciates the upgrades that have occurred. We have recently, my Lord, made the official gazettes for the first time available digitally on that website, eliminating the delay in publishing and improper distribution by having real-time uploads of gazettes separated by categories, so you could search them by categories. My Lord, we have undertaken our public consultation on the land adjudication and land registration bills. These are pieces of legislation that will implement the land registration in the Bahamas. The compendium of land reform bills will represent a significant step towards ensuring that land transactions in the Bahamas are transparent, efficient, and secure. We intend to have the bills tabled this quarter, the first quarter of 2025, and debated and implemented by the second quarter. So get ready. In the new budget year, we will have a new land registrar and land registration system. We have already secured space in the financial center, so all registrars will be in the same place for the land registrar, and are currently working on the implementation strategy. We will continue our land reform project through 2025 with a new planning and subdivisions bill to come to Parliament this year. We are also looking at the prospect of a law of property bill that will modernize and consolidate the numerous land-related legislation that exists in the country. My Lord, it will be remiss of me if I do not take a moment to speak to the recent and notable allegations in our country. I want to assure that the government of the Bahamas takes all allegations of corruption, both domestically and internationally, very seriously, whether the allegations are against our armed forces or any other government agency or official. We have worked to introduce legislation that will address the concerns of the people with transparency and with authority. The Independent Commission of Investigations bill has been released for consultation, and we have taken note of the feedback that has been provided to us. We will proceed with this legislation to Parliament shortly. We have looked at broadening the scope as well to include those senior civil servants and parliamentarians in the investigation framework of that commission. We will bring legislation to establish a whistleblower protection framework. Whistleblowers are critical to the fight against corruption, my Lord. Not only do they safeguard and sometimes help recover misused public funds, but they also contribute to bringing about policy reforms. Their actions raise awareness and helps establish public accountability and an integrity culture. The Ombudsman Act of 2024 was enacted to provide for the establishment of the Office of the Ombudsman, which will ensure that every public officer acts in accordance with its mandate and in compliance with the fundamental freedoms and human rights. We intend to bring this act into force within the ensuing weeks and proceed towards the establishment of the Office of the Ombudsman this quarter. In conclusion, my Lord, as we prepare to embrace a new year together, I want to charge each member of this noble profession to continue to work together with integrity and ask that we dedicate ourselves to collectively fulfilling the rule of law in whatever capacity in which we serve. Let us continue to build the legal profession with high standards and impartiality, and that we demonstrate fairness in our approach, garnering the public's trust in our legal and our judicial system. As we work together in the interest of justice, may God continue to bless the justices, magistrates, the judicial staff, members of the legal profession, my team at the Office of the Attorney General, and the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas with a safe and productive new year. Thank you, my Lord.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Mr. President?
Much obliged, my Lord. I will stand on the protocol established, and I admonish the Attorney General for copying off my sheet at the church service. May it please you, my Lord. I am grateful for the opportunity to bring these remarks on behalf of Bar Council and the Bahamas Bar Association as we embark on a new legal year. It gives me great pleasure to be addressing you during the inaugural Bahamas Bar Association Legal Week. And I extend my thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister for his proclamation of Legal Week and the Honorable Attorney General for his support in that regard. The partnership between the Bahamian bench, bar, and government has continued to produce impactful and enduring results to the collective benefit of the Bahamian public. While there remains so much more to do, I am comforted by our collective commitment to shared values as reflected in our various collaborations over the past year. Legal Week and its events are a celebration of our national commitment to deepening public engagement in the promotion of the rule of law, the administration of justice, and positive law reform. It is also a time when we place renewed focus on the training and upskilling of both bar and bench in order to ensure that they are best equipped to meet the challenges of a modern Bahamas and deliver upon the expectations of the public whom we all serve. Our public forum held yesterday in collaboration with the Eugene Deputes Law School under the title Death Penalty, the Worst of the Worst, represented an opportunity for the public to engage in a meaningful dialogue with a distinguished host and panelist from our membership, as well as an eminent colleague from abroad. I extend thanks to our host, Mr. Jeffrey Lloyd, and panelists Damian Gomez-Casey, Renard Henfield, and Ty Pindamaki, as well as Professor Carsten Zachler, Senior Counsel, for a truly engaging public forum. I encourage all members of the bar and bench to embrace future opportunities provided by the Bar Association to participate in our ongoing public discussion series. It is important that the public benefits from informed, substantive, and constructive debate concerning the serious issues affecting our nation. We also engaged in 2 days of training as a bar on January 6th and 7th, which complemented 2 days of judicial training undertaken by the Judiciary, which were well attended and provided continued professional development opportunities on a wide range of subjects. Thanks are extended to the presenters and attendees at these events. On Monday evening, the Bar Association paused in celebration of one of its great servant leaders, Mrs. Rachel Culmer, Honorary Secretary Emerita, who served the Bar Association with distinction for many, many wonderful years. We remain grateful for the blessing of her service to her colleagues and profession, which she always undertook with her signature warmth and encouragement. She was known to calm the stormiest sea and bridge the widest of gaps. I take this opportunity, with your kind indulgence, Your Lordship, to again extend heartfelt thanks to Mrs. Culmer for her service and continued commitment to the Bahamas Bar Association. Before I reluctantly leave the subject of Law Week, as there is so much to be said for this initiative, I would also like to thank the Law Week Organizing Committee, who, without whose support and assistance, it would have undoubtedly remained an aspiration. Their leaderships, the Honorable Madam Justice Janine Wish Gomez and Madam Justice Denise Lewis Johnson, Her Worship Jan Marie Darville, and Ianthea Forbes, Bar Administrator. I also extend personal thanks to Bar Counsel, Glenda Roca, our Treasurer, Dawson, our 3-year Council member, Crystal Rutherford Ferguson, Kelly Ingram, Roberta Quant, and Tonya Bastian Galanis, Principal of the Eugene Deputes Law School, Dawson Malone, sorry. Bahamas Bar Association Law Week and its events represent the fruits of the positive working relationship that has been cultivated between the bar, the bench, and the government in our jurisdiction, which is something we ought to be very proud of and nurture. While we have adopted an adversarial system of justice, it is important that we remember that as advocates and judges, we are not adversaries. Instead, partners working together to preserve the rule of law and promote the administration of justice. Legal Week also encompasses today's opening ceremony and the opening events in Grand Bahama scheduled for tomorrow. My Lord, I am pleased to advise the draft Legal Profession Bill 2025 has been released for consultation, and that we have had our first consultative session with members on the proposed bill during our Legal Week training sessions. Modernizing the regulatory structure of the legal profession remains a priority for Bar Counsel, as we seek to ensure that our association has the requisite tools to regulate, protect, and promote the Bahamian legal profession on the national and international stage. I would also like to take this opportunity, my Lord, to extend congratulations to Dr. Peter Maynard Casey, President of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association and a former President of the Bahamas Bar Association, who is about to conclude his term as head of that important international legal organization. I encourage members to attend the Commonwealth Law Conference 2025 in Malta on the 6th to the 10th of April 2025, which has been organized under Dr. Maynard's leadership as the CLA pays tribute to his successful tenure at its helm. Dr. Maynard has been a strong advocate for the Bahamian legal profession to take and maintain a leading role on the international stage, and his career at the bar reflects his continued commitment and embodiment of that goal. My Lord, as the Attorney General referenced, the Court Services Act 2023 came into force on the first day of July 2024, and the Court Services Council, of which I'm a member and of which your Lordship chairs, has begun its work managing matters related to the administration of the courts pursuant to its statutory mandate. The Act and the work of the Court Services Council represent a milestone achievement and reflects a national commitment to an independent, well-resourced, adaptive, and innovative judiciary. The Bahamas Bar Association remains committed to the independence, defense, accountability, and development of the Bahamian judiciary and its jurisprudence. I am pleased also to announce that your Lordship has declared the 12th and 13th days of June 2025 as Bahamas Bar Association Training Days. We look forward to again coming together to share and encourage best practice, innovations, and new ideas in furtherance of our mandate to uphold the rule of law and improve the administration of justice in the Bahamas. Last year's training days and associated events held in June of 2024 under the theme Continuing to Uphold the Standards in Modern Law Practice was an overwhelming success, and I am certain that the Planning Committee is hard at work seeking to outshine themselves with this year's events. Training, my Lord, is at the heart of the Bar Association's commitment and duty to its members, and I commend our Civil Bar Committee, Criminal Bar Committee, Real Estate Committee, Family Law Committee, and others for their efforts, training, and other activities over the past year. I would also like to acknowledge the commitment of the Office of the Attorney General to continue training opportunities for members, both in relation to significant law reform proposals, such as land registration and the legal profession bill, and as well as for ensuring that our members at the Office of the Attorney General are able to take full advantage of the training, networking, and other events hosted by the bar. As an association, my Lord, we remain conscious of and alive to the public's insistence upon and their undoubted entitlement to integrity, transparency, and accountability from those charged with the administration of justice and public affairs more broadly. The Freedom of Information Act 2017 was intended and promised to reinforce and give further effect to fundamental principles underlying our system of constitutional democracy, namely governmental accountability, transparency, and public participation in national decision-making, by granting the public a general right of access to records held by public authorities, subject only to exceptions which balance that right against reasonable and proportionate public interest exemptions. Hair and makeup. My Lord, while the Freedom of Information Act has yet to be brought into full force and effect, I must emphasize that the public has an inherent right to access the information to which access is intended to be facilitated under the Act. Every day that full implementation of the Act is delayed is an unreasonable and unconstitutional interference with that right. While successive administrations have acknowledged this fundamental right, the government has yet to discharge its obligation to vindicate that right, which remains a priority for the association. We applaud the government's recognition of the need for transparent, effective, and accessible public integrity legislation. Integrity cannot coexist with impunity, and the exercise of the power of the state without the accountability and transparency to which the populace is entitled is tyranny, no matter how seemingly docile or indolent. It is, however, the abiding hope and objective of the association that we fix our national roof while the sun is shining. We have reviewed and provided commentary on the Independent Commission of Investigations bill tabled by the government and Parliament. We look forward to revised legislation as promised by the Attorney General for further consultation that provides for a secure, accessible, and transparent complaint procedure with respect to allegations of corruption or misconduct on the part of not only members of the security forces and public officers as defined in the bill, but also on the part of those office holders identified in Article 127 of the Constitution. Our role as attorneys is integral to the preservation of the rule of law and the improvement of the administration of justice. In discharge of that societal function, we are mandated and called upon to stand in defense of the fundamental rights and freedoms of every individual in the Bahamas. The discharge of our constitutional obligations requires a consistent, positive, and collaborative working relationship between the Bahamas Bar Association and the Royal Bahamas Police Force. We congratulate and welcome the new Commissioner of Police and Provost Marshal, Ms. Shanta Knowles, and I look forward to meeting with her and her top team as we pursue our shared goals for the benefit of the Bahamian people and visitors to our shores. As I often say, and feel compelled to say again today, the Bahamas as a nation does not produce sun, sand, or sea. What the Bahamas does produce is Bahamians. And our national endeavor can best be judged by the lived experience, life prospects, and overall health, happiness, and well-being of the Bahamians that we produce. Increased attention has recently, and rightly, been focused on the children of this nation, who must be better served by the work that we are doing. Children cannot advocate for themselves, so it is of the utmost importance that we ensure that their rights and legitimate expectations are fully accounted for in our reform agenda. In that vein, we congratulate Your Lordship on the recent opening of the Family Court Complex on Bernard Road, New Providence, with its focus on the services that families and young people receive from the justice system, which is emblematic of our collective commitment in that regard. Protecting and preserving and investing in the security, safety, and opportunities for the children of this nation is our clearest and arguably only sustainable path out of the mire of crime and corruption we face as a nation. The Bahamas Bar Association remains committed to advocating for positive law reform that better houses, educates, empowers, uplifts, protects, and equips all Bahamians to embrace and take full advantage of the opportunities available to them, and to create further opportunities for them to grow, develop, and thrive. May it please you, my Lord.
Thank you, Mr. President. My lords, my ladies, other judicial officers, Mr. Attorney, President of the Bar Association, and members of Bar Council, and attorneys, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Under the Supreme Court Act, the sittings of the court commence on the second Wednesday in the month of January. The growing size of our bench and bar has caused these statutory sittings of the court to continue to take place in meeting spaces such as this one, rather than our traditional accommodation in the main Supreme Court. We await the construction of the new Supreme Court complex and the opportunity to return to a more traditional setting. Today is the third occasion on which, as head of the Judiciary, I have the pleasure and duty to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to share this occasion. It is always appropriate to begin such an address by expressing thanks to the Almighty God for His abundant mercies. I continue to be both humbled and honored to have been given the opportunity to serve the Bahamas as our Chief Justice. I remain ever thankful for the support of my family, colleagues, and friends. The week began with the annual Red Mass service at St. Francis Xavier's Cathedral on Sunday past, where we received the prayers and fellowship of His Grace, the Most Reverend Patrick Pinder, Archbishop of the Catholic Diocese of Nassau, invoking the guidance of the Holy Spirit on the work of the courts. This morning, we gratefully received the spirited charge of the Anglican Bishop, the Right Reverend Leish Boyd, who challenged us to aim high and be our best selves. I thank him, along with the Dean of Christ Church Cathedral, for so graciously accommodating us for our usual annual service. I wish to welcome the Commissioner of Police, Ms. Shanta Knowles, and to congratulate her on her historic appointment as the first female Commissioner of Police. We have worked well, very well in the past, and I look forward to working with her in this new role. She takes over an organization which is not experiencing its strongest days, but an organization which we, as a people, cannot allow to fail. There are so many talented, honest, decent men and women on the Royal Bahamas Police Force whose hard work and efforts have been overshadowed by recent events. Commissioner Knowles is the embodiment of these fine men and women. As she rebuilds the trust of the Bahamian people, I pledge to her the full support of my office and of the Judiciary as we continue to carry out our mutual mandates. The Commissioner of Police is the Provost Marshal for the court, and for this reason, we welcome her presence sitting with us in these ceremonies. I wish to thank her for the usual excellent presentation of the Guard of Honor by the Internal Security Division, accompanied by the Police Force Band. I also wish to express our appreciation for the facilitation of our procession by the Traffic Division this morning. Permit me now to recognize the presence of the President of the Court of Appeal of Jamaica, the Honorable Justice Marva McDonald Bishop, OJ, CD, and a delegation. Justice McDonald Bishop, a special friend of the Judiciary of the Bahamas, provided training support at our recently concluded annual training conference. In the Court of Appeal in 2024, we said farewell to former President Sir Michael Barnett, who reached the constitutionally mandated retirement age. In June, a special sitting was convened to provide a fitting farewell for an exceptional jurist. The Honorable Mr. Justice John Isaacs succeeded Sir Michael as President. Justice Isaacs is expected to demit office at the end of this month. And as the Court of Appeal will convene a special sitting to honor Mr. Justice Isaacs, I will not preempt what I hope to say during that sitting. I will nonetheless use this occasion to publicly recognize his commitment and long service to the people of the Bahamas in so many diverse roles. As Law Officer of the Crown, Chief Magistrate, Senior Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice of Appeal, and now President of the Court of Appeal. I wish him well in the next chapters of his life and look forward to working with his successor in office. Since last year's opening, we welcomed to the Supreme Court bench Justices Joyanne Ferguson, Andrew McKinney, Darren Ellis, Constance Delancey, Dale Fitzpatrick, and Leif Farquharson, King's Counsel. Justices Delancey and Ferguson are well known to you. Justice Delancey is the former Registrar of the Supreme Court, and Justice Ferguson, who had previously acted in the post, joined the Supreme Court bench from the magistracy, having been the longest-serving Chief Magistrate. Justice McKinney and Farquharson joined the bench after distinguished careers at the private bar. Justice Farquharson, who began his practice at the public bar, had been elevated to membership in the exclusive inner bar. Justice Ellis joined the bench following a diverse career which included service at the private bar, in academia, and in the magistracy. Justice Fitzpatrick, a Canadian, joins the Bahamas' bench following a stint on the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. He had previously spent 12 years on the Superior Court of Ontario, Canada. In February 2025, we will bid farewell to Madam Justice Donna Newton, who will achieve the constitutionally mandated retirement age. Justice Newton was appointed to the Supreme Court bench in 2018, but had previously served as Assistant Registrar, Deputy Registrar, and Registrar in the Supreme Court and Court of Appeal. Justice Newton found her niche in the family division of the court and was the first Hague Network judge for the Bahamas. We thank her for her contribution to the Judiciary and wish her well in her retirement. I wish to thank Industrial Tribunal President Indira Demarais Francis for agreeing to serve as an acting Justice of the Supreme Court during 2024 in the civil divisions of the court in Grand Bahama. We also welcome to the Supreme Court new Assistant Registrars Roseanne Sweeting, Indy Hunter, Jonathan Deal, and Akira Martin. On the elevation of Registrar Delancey to the Supreme Court bench, Deputy Registrar Ronaldo Toot was appointed to act as the Registrar of the Supreme Court. We wish him well in this new role and look forward to his continued service. In the magistracy, during 2024, Attorney Roberta Reckley was confirmed as the Chief Magistrate on the elevation of Justice Ferguson. Subasola Swain and Charleston Smith were appointed as acting Deputy Chief Magistrates. Magistrates Algernon Allen Jr., Kendra Kelly, and Raquel Wims were promoted to Senior Magistrates. Anishka Isaacs was seconded from the Court of Appeal as an acting Senior Magistrate. Kevin Farrington, Miles Parker, and Petrocelli Edwards were appointed as acting magistrates. We congratulate them all on their appointments. The JLST will advertise very shortly in an effort to fill 2 vacancies for magistrates within the coming months. I wish to also thank Viola Major and Jonathan Deal, who both acted for short stints in the magistracy during 2024. We also said farewell to Judicial Research Councils Rashawn Longley and Glenn Curry, who have moved to the private sector. We thank them for their contributions and wish them well in their new careers at the private bar. On that note, I wish to make a special appeal to young lawyers to consider a stint as a Judicial Research Counsel, whether in the Court of Appeal or in the Supreme Court. It is an excellent initial exposure for young lawyers to the practice of the law without the pressure of firm life or of clients. The training and insights gained have been described as invaluable. In 2024, several judicial officers and former judicial officers were recognized with national honors. Retired Senior Justice Estelle Gray Evans, Justice Franklin Williams, and Industrial Tribunal President Indira Demare Francis were each awarded the Order of the Bahamas in ceremonies held in October 2024. On the 12th of August 2024, the Judiciary was saddened to learn of the untimely passing of Deputy Chief Magistrate Debbie Ferguson, who died in office. DCM Ferguson, a treasured member of the Judiciary team, had served as a magistrate for over 20 years, all of which was in Grand Bahama. She will be sorely missed, and we continue to keep her family and friends in our prayers. I now turn to look at the criminal courts. The criminal courts continue to receive focused attention. Since our last opening ceremony, we've introduced 2 additional criminal courts to provide additional capacity. 1 additional court in Grand Bahama and another in New Providence. In 2024, deliberate efforts were taken to engage in criminal justice reform in the Supreme Court. Most notable of these efforts was the passage of the Supreme Court Amendment Act 2024. The Supreme Court Amendment Act 2024 has permitted the Rules Committee to pass the Supreme Court Criminal Case Management Amendment Rules 2024. These new rules, which came into force on the 2nd of January 2025, are intended to promote more efficient and effective case management in criminal matters by providing for the defense statement and a mechanism for pretrial evidentiary hearings. The defense statement, along with the full disclosure obligations of the prosecution, allows for early identification of the issues in the case by the trial judge and therefore provides for more meaningful case management. The pretrial evidentiary hearings would allow evidentiary and admissibility challenges to take place before having to impanel a jury. These hearings could even obviate the need for a jury trial to be ultimately impaneled in circumstances where the determination of the issue may decide the entire case, resulting in a withdrawal or a plea agreement. At the very least, it shortens the length of a jury impaneled trial. In advance of bringing into force the new rules, a period of sensitization and meaningful engagement took place amongst criminal justice stakeholders. That engagement included a 2-day training seminar facilitated by leading UK counsel, which involves the judiciary, prosecutors, and the defense bar. In 2024, we established a dedicated bail court to hear all new bail applications in the Supreme Court. To support the establishment of the bail court and the registry functions, I issued a practice direction for approved surety requirements on applications for bail. Justice Brathwaite is the first judge to sit in that court. The purpose of the dedicated bail court was not only to bring a focused attention to the bail process, but to ensure consistency in bail applications and surety approvals. In order to support the system of legal aid in criminal matters and to encourage practitioners to pursue criminal law as a practice area, we increased the fees paid for criminal legal briefs. A practice guidance note was issued in May of 2024, providing a more structured system for payment to lawyers who engage in this most important work. Now that the criminal case management rules have been passed, evidentiary hearings would also attract the same fees as trial days. A draft bench book for the criminal courts has been prepared by the criminal division. A decision was taken to enlist professional editing and publication services for the production of the work. Justice Peter Jamadar of the CCJ and Elron Elahi of the Caribbean Association of Judicial Officers, who spearheaded the joint bench book for Guyana, Belize, and Barbados, have agreed to assist in this project. We look forward to receiving a professionally edited document, complete with hyperlinks, cross-references, and additional chapters, including criminal case management, by summer of this year. Justice Rena McKay continues to be the Judiciary's liaison person for this project. The Sentencing Guidelines Commission was established in April of 2024 and is being chaired by Sir Michael Barnett. The members of the commission include Senior Justice Cheryl Grant-Thompson as Deputy Chairman, Justice of Appeal Bernard Turner, Director of Public Prosecutions Cordell Fraser, Chief Magistrate Roberto Reckley, Mr. Stanley Roll of the Public Defender's Office, Ms. Miranda Adley as the nominee for the Bar Association, Reverend Carla Culmer of the Religious Community, and Assistant Director of Social Services, Ms. Sonia Saunders. The Secretary and Research Counsel to the Commission are Ms. Christina Wallace-Whitfield and Shona Richards, respectively. The Commission is presently considering the first draft of the guidelines and are expected to report to us very soon. And now look at the civil divisions of the Supreme Court. In addition to the Supreme Court Criminal Case Management Rules 2024, the Rules Committee passed the Supreme Court Provost Marshal Fees Rules and the Supreme Court Enforcement of Orders and Awards of the Industrial Tribunal Rules 2024. They are both expected to be brought into force this month. Practice directions have been issued for fixed date claims and for a further allocation of the work of the court between judges and registrars. On the 19th of December 2024, the Right Honorable Prime Minister officially opened the Family Court Complex on Burnett Road. The Supreme Court Family and Probate Registries were relocated to the complex in November of 2024 in advance of the complete relocation of the Magistrates' Family and Domestic Courts and the Family and Probate Divisions of the Supreme Court later this month. In addition to modern, fit-for-purpose court spaces and registries, provision in the complex is made for all of the attendant wraparound services, such as the Department of Social Services, the police, daycare, and nursing facilities. The complex will also house a juvenile court and a mediation center, which is expected to be completed by summer of 2025. The Judiciary is extremely grateful to the Executive for the considerable infrastructural investment in this complex. During 2025, I propose to establish a separate listing office for the Family Court to provide for greater efficiencies across all divisions. The completion of the Mediation Center will pave the way for the introduction of the long-awaited court-connected mediation component of the CPR in 2025. This will allow us to advance mediation as a viable means to help relieve the stress upon the court system. The Mediation Center will provide a space for the mediation of disputes by both a civil and family nature. The issuance of a practice direction will allow for the appointment of a mediation coordinator to manage the court-connected mediation process for the courts. We intend to capitalize on the many talented mediation professionals already qualified in the jurisdiction. I look at court technology. A significant milestone in 2024 was the bringing into force of the Electronic Case Management Rules 2023 on the 1st of September 2024. On that day, the Supreme Court commenced the electronic filing of court documents remotely into the Judiciary's Courier e-filing platform for the first time. The electronic platform provides a myriad of advantages, reduces paper usage and manual processing of case files, improves security by eliminating the incidence of lost or misplaced files, eliminates the need to physically transport files between judicial offices, improves accessibility by giving 24 hours access to the registry and court files by judicial officers and lawyers alike. The convenience for lawyers to immediately file documents directly into the portal from the comfort of their chambers. Instant updating, as electronic filing means that files are immediately updated and the updates immediately available to all relevant parties. And it strengthens the financial accountability of the system. The system is now being configured for the Court of Appeal, and we expect to extend the platform to the Court of Appeal by the end of the first quarter of 2025. I wish to express my gratitude to Assistant Registrars Roseanne Sweeting and Indy Hunter, who have been managing the newly created e-filing registry and providing hands-on support in helping users access and utilize the platform. The year 2025 will mark a new phase in the recording of proceedings before the courts. The magistrates are now completely dependent on the recording of court proceedings digitally. Except in limited circumstances, the use of stenographers will only be a requirement in criminal trials and evidentiary hearings. Civil and family divisions of the Supreme Court, bail applications, and criminal case management hearings will become completely dependent on the use of digital recording apparatus. We've been steadily building our transcription capacity and have acquired new software to be able to substantially assist our existing cadre of stenographers. In 2024, magistrates began to hear civil disputes of up to, I look at the magistrates court. In 2024, magistrates began to hear civil disputes of up to $20,000. This empowered magistrates to preside over a broader spectrum of civil matters, facilitating swifter and more accessible resolution for individuals and businesses alike. With the enhanced jurisdiction, the magistrates court emerged as a vital avenue for seeking justice and resolving disputes efficiently. In an effort towards enhancing accessibility and efficiency in legal proceedings, we established the first full-time dedicated civil court exclusively for magistrate civil matters. We also added, as of the 1st of November 2024, an additional night civil court. It is hoped that this will streamline the civil litigation process and alleviate some of the burden on the Supreme Court schedules. As the demand increases, we intend during the course of this year to add perhaps an additional civil magistrate court doing exclusively matters during the course of the day. In 2023, a dedicated firearms court was established on a part-time basis, on similar terms to the traffic court. The court has proven to be extremely effective and will be established on a full-time basis with effect from the 20th of January 2025 as the courtroom space becomes available due to the establishment of the family court. The year 2024 saw the completion of the first full year of the return of Family Island administrators hearing criminal and family cases in their jurisdictions as magistrates once again. In September 2024, we began a more intensive focus on Family Island communities by having the magistrates spend a longer period in the islands. Senior Magistrate McKinney spent 2 months across the island of Eleuthera during the last quarter of 2024. He also spent a month on the island of Andros, and a complete schedule has been developed for 2025. In 2025, we intend to leverage virtual technology to augment the hearing of criminal matters in the Family Islands. I'll now look briefly at judicial education. The Bahamas Judicial Education Institute conducted several key training initiatives during the course of the year. A 4-day training program for judicial officers and Judicial Research Council, facilitated by the Caribbean Association of Judicial Officers, was held on January 5th to 18th, 2024, under the theme, Strengthening the Judicial Office. The 2-day training program for judicial officers and criminal practitioners on the new criminal case management rules. In September 2024, a family division workshop was conducted on domestic violence orders. In December 2024, a 2-day orientation program was conducted for newly appointed judges and magistrates. Orientation sessions and training sessions on the digital court reporting and the electronic case management systems were conducted throughout the course of the year. Judicial officers were afforded the opportunity to attend several training programs and conferences overseas in 2024. These included the IP Case Law Conference in Kingston, Jamaica, the ILEA training course in El Salvador, the UWI Caribbean Commercial Law Workshop in Port of Spain, Trinidad, training on civil forfeiture by the National Center for State Courts in Miami, Florida, the Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges Association annual conference in Kigali, Rwanda, the International Association for Court Administrators Conference in Singapore, the International Association for Judicial Trainers Conference in Seoul, Korea, the Global Program on Criminal Network Disruption in Port of Spain, Trinidad, and the E-Courts Conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. I wish to thank Justices Dava Gomez and Card Stubbs for the leadership of the BJEI. While some of the training was funded by the Judiciary, regional and international agencies, a considerable number of these overseas training was undertaken at the expense and support of the U.S. Embassy here in Nassau. Without that support, our attendance and participation in these valuable training opportunities would not have been possible, considering our budgetary constraints. I wish to publicly express our thanks and gratitude to Chargé d'Affaires Ms. Kimberly Furnish and her team on behalf of the Judiciary for their continued assistance in these initiatives, which continue to deepen an already strong partnership. As Chief Justice, I attended the annual Conference of Caribbean Heads of Judiciaries in Kingston, Jamaica in June of 2024. The Heads of Judiciaries Conference was attended by 9 other Heads of Judiciaries from across the Caribbean. The theme of the conference was Judicial Leadership in a Changing Environment. It provided an important forum for the Heads of Judiciaries to consult and collaborate towards the improvement of access of justice for our citizens of the region. The 2025 conference will be hosted by the Bahamas and the Bahamian Judiciary, and we look forward to welcoming the regional heads to our shores. I'll just speak briefly again on the judicial plant. The Honorable Attorney General has spoken to the developments relative to the proposed Supreme Court complex. I will only say that we look forward with great anticipation for the benefits which a modern court facility outfitted with adequate technology and facilities to support the work of the Judiciary can provide. A modern court complex will centralize services to permit greater and more efficient use of resources and harness the benefits of technology. He has also spoken to you of the new facilities for a commercial court, and we look forward to working with him on that project. Other capital works in the Judiciary included significant upgrades at the Supreme Court Annex 1, to which the Office of the Chief Justice has been relocated. This has permitted the utilization of an additional criminal court in the Hansard building. The internal renovations to Annex 1, which involve each floor, has been substantially completed. Work to the basement and the floor continues. It is hoped that as soon as the work in Annex 1 is completed, work on Annex 2 will progress thereafter. Undoubtedly, the most significant event of 2024 was the bringing into force of the Court Services Act 2023. The Act came into effect on the 1st of July, 2024. This landmark and transformative legislation represents a significant step forward in modernizing and improving the efficiency of our judicial system. By placing the courts under the administration of an autonomous body, conferring on that body the power to provide the courts with administrative facilities and services necessary for the proper administration of justice, to enable the judiciary to manage its administrative and financial affairs, and to promote transparency and accountability in the administration of justice. The Act established the Court Services Council, which is responsible for providing administration and support services for the courts for the management of all matters relative to the administration of the courts. The first members of the Board of Directors of the Council were myself as Chairman, President of the Court of Appeal, Mr. Justice John Isaacs, Madam Justice Gilomena Archer-Mins, Supreme Court Registrar Ms. Constance Delancey, as she then was, Mr. Roberto Reckley, Chief Magistrate, Mr. Herbert Cash, CPA, Ms. Crystal Rutherford Ferguson, President of the Bahamas Bar Association, Mr. Khalil Parker, King's Counsel, and Court of Appeal Registrar, Ms. Christina Wallace-Whitfield. The Board of Directors of the Council is responsible for overseeing the implementation of the Act and has been busy developing the initial infrastructure of the Council and managing the transition process. I wish to publicly express my thanks and gratitude to the Board for their work in 2024 and for their dedication to this process. The board appointed Mr. Delgado Forbes, Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, to be the Chief Executive Officer on secondment. We've agreed to the appointment of a new CFO who is expected to take office on the 13th of January 2024 on secondment from the Ministry of Finance. The board has approved the new HR policies and are finalizing the new posts and salary scales. This will permit the council to begin making offers of employment to staff. The transition to the council has not been without its challenges, the most notable of which has been the loss of some of our most valuable and cherished team members who have chosen to remain in the public service. We respect their decision and wish them well in their new career paths. I also wish to publicly thank them for all their contributions over the years in the development of the judiciary. I wish to commend to you the annual report for 2024, which covers the work of the courts during this past year. It contains important information and statistics about the work and operations of the courts. As usual, it will be available in its digital format on the court's website very shortly and in hard copy. I wish to formally register my thanks and appreciation to the team responsible for preparing the annual report, spearheaded by Justice Lewis Johnson, Delancey, and Fraser, Senior Justice Fraser, and Registrar Toot. I wish to extend my thanks to the Director of Court Services, the registrars, and their teams, including the staff in my chambers, for the enormous work done in bringing off today's proceedings. As I conclude, I will pause to express my gratitude and thanks to the Minister of Finance, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, and to the Finance Secretary, Mr. Samuel Wilson, for provisioning the significant needed capital expenditure for the judiciary during the course of the year, and for the expenditure required in the transition to the Court Services Council. I wish to thank my colleagues in the Judicial Legal Service Commission, Justice Appeal Turner, Father James Moultrie, Ms. Crystal Sands Feast, and Mr. Andrew Ramming for their service in 2024. I also take this time to express my gratitude to my colleagues on the Rules Committee, Justice of Appeal Indra Charles, Mr. Khalil Parker, KC, Mr. Lee Carroll, and Mr. Terry North for their work in 2024. I wish to thank the President of the Bar Association, Mr. Khalil Parker, King's Counsel, and his hard-working Bar Council for partnering with us during the course of 2024. I must say that I'm heartened by their increased focus on judicial education and training for lawyers at the bar. I look forward to continuing our partnerships in 2025. Last year required significant engagement between us across a range of areas of mutual interest. Mr. Parker, as president of the bar, sits on the Rules Committee as well as the Court Services Council. I always value the President's valuable contribution and wise counsel in moving the judiciary forward. I want to express my thanks and gratitude to the Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Ryan Pinder, King's Counsel, the leader of the bar, and his team at the Office of the Attorney General, including the law reform team, with whom we did much liaising this year. The Honorable Attorney General continues to be extremely supportive of all of the initiatives and projects of the judiciary. His ideas are progressive, and his desire for the advancement of the judiciary and the justice system remains steadfast. In the transition to the Court Services Council, there was considerable engagement between the Attorney General's office to ensure that the process would move as smoothly as possible. We look forward to working with the Office of the Attorney General in 2025 to achieve our shared goals of enhancing the administration of justice. I wish to publicly extend my congratulations to the new Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms. Cordell Fraser, and the new Director of Legal Affairs, Ms. Dania Parker. Ms. Fraser and Mrs. Parker are both well prepared for their new roles, and I have every confidence that the Office of the DPP and the Legal Affairs Department will continue to thrive under their leadership. I remain privileged to have been afforded the opportunity to lead the talented judicial officers and staff that make up the judiciary across the Bahamas. I again publicly express my thanks for all that they do to ensure that we live up to the constitutional mandate of an independent, impartial, and fearless judiciary. Finally, I give my special thanks to the senior management team of the judiciary, comprising of Senior Justices Fraser and Grant Thompson, Registrars Delancey and Toot, Chief Magistrate Reckley, the Chief Executive Officer Mr. Delgado Forbes, and their teams. With these words, then, I declare the 2025 legal year officially open.
All rise.
Well, that ends the first sitting of the courts for this 2025 legal year. Ramona Farquharson Seymour, we heard from the Attorney General, we heard from the President of the Bar Association, and we also heard from the Chief Justice. Of each of these speakers, what strikes you most?
Well, certainly when we look at the speech from the Attorney General, it was interesting. He laid out what is to come. And a particular note would be a number of initiatives and registrars. The Registrar General's department seems that they're going to, I can't say completely dismantle, but certainly pervasive changes. We're going to now have a companies registrar, records registrar, land registrar, and with that obviously would be changes. He's also spoken about the land registry, which many people are, I don't know if they say looking forward to, but certainly issue of contention, because it will certainly affect quietings as well.
Absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see that, but he's spoken of that. And I think one of the other things as well for many people that we have to consider would be cost, because recently you would know, Julian, that in the newspaper was reported about $76 million or more being paid to consultants. And people have a lot of concerns about how the government is using their monies. And with this, certainly it means more work for attorneys. I can't complain on that end. But on the flip side as well, I think a lot of people would be questioning, well, with all of these implementations of new rules and obviously offices, if you have a registrar, they have to have staff. And that certainly would mean hiring more persons, salaries, cars, free gasoline, the rest of it that goes with it. And so I believe the question would be, is it in fact necessary? And again, too, what will be the role of a Registrar General? Will that position fall away, or will they be in charge of all of these 4 or 5 individual registrars? I think that was interesting and referenced from the AG. With respect to the president of the Bar Association, again, he continually makes the call for the implementation of the Freedom of Information Act. He's been calling for that, I think he said, from 2017 or even before, asking every government appears to give, he is saying, paraphrasing, lip service. But instead, we can't seem to get anyone to really commit. All of these other bills are being proposed and passed through, but again, the Freedom of Information Act, which is, of course, vital, not just for attorneys, but for laypersons as well.
For people in my profession, too.
Of course. You need to know, I mean, as simple as if someone owes you, you ought to have a right to know where they work, how much they're earning, the rest of it. You can't even access that information. Obviously, there will be checks and balances, but he's spoken of that, and obviously the commitment to training and going forward. So that was quite insightful. And of course, our Chief Justice spoken about a number of initiatives, the main being the family court and other courts to come, committees to advise. And one thing he seems to be touting would be, of course, the autonomy. And he's thanked the government for getting getting us started, but that certainly is a major stride for the judiciary.
Great, so it should be a very interesting 2025 for the judiciary.
Certainly, it ought to be. A lot for persons to look forward to, and again, I think a lot of what we had echoed prior, I think we heard reiterated by the speakers, and that was very interesting about judges and giving decisions. I think the AG was certainly strong on that, and them giving decisions in a timely manner.
Well, I really want to thank you for being my co-host on this.
Thanks for guiding me.
Well, I don't know. Your legal expertise has proven invaluable, and we just hope that the year is good for everyone, and that the Bahamas continues to grow and be better.
Yes, sir.
So at that, let's end this broadcast. I want to thank all of the broadcast team from the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas, and we thank you for tuning in. Until then, I'm Julian Reed with
Ramona Farquharson.
Have a great day.
At Fort Montague, I'm Opal Roach. This is ZNS.
Hey, what's up, Mario?
Hey, Dale, what's going on?